Hello and welcome back to the Electronic Intifada's live stream for Thursday, March 12th. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleagues Ali Abunimah, Jon Elmer, Asa Winstanley, and Tamara Nassar. It's day 888 of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Coming up, we'll speak with researcher and reporter Roqayah Chamseddine from Beirut to talk about how Israel is bombing civilian areas across South Lebanon, forcing more than 750,000 people from their homes, while Hezbollah launches rockets and drones against Israeli military targets. Later on in the program, Jon will report on the second week of the U.S. and Israel's war on Iran, including coverage of Israeli strikes on Iranian oil depots, IRGC missile and drone attacks against critical missile defense radar installations on U.S. bases across the region, and the war expanding into Lebanon as Hezbollah battles Israel. But first, let's take a look at the news. Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. Israeli forces killed Palestinian children and adults in Gaza this week, while maintaining a total closure on all but one of the crossings for a trickle of humanitarian aid. Late Wednesday night, Israeli warplanes bombed a camp for forcibly displaced families in western Gaza City. Photographer Sabr Nur al-Din captured the moment an airstrike hit the camp. Reporter Mahmoud Shalha documented the impact of the strike in the immediate aftermath. He says, quote, "Right now, a forcibly displaced persons camp is being targeted with a missile."
الآن استهداف مخيم للنازحين بصاروخ من الطائرات الحربية في هذه اللحظات هنا غرب مدينة غزة. هكذا المشهد الآن هنا في غرب مدينة غزة بعد تلك الغارة التي استهدفت مخيما للنازحين هنا غرب مدينة غزة.
That was from reporter Mahmoud Shalha on Wednesday night in western Gaza City. Earlier on Wednesday, Israel killed a 40-year-old man, Basel Mahmoud Abu Warda, in a drone strike west of Gaza City. Photographer Mohammed Kumsan captured footage of a civil defense worker at the scene talking about the victim, whose body, he says, was scattered in pieces. He said the rescue workers were gathering the body parts and putting them into a box and a bag. Quote, "This is what Ramadan looks like for us," the civil defense member says, adding that several bystanders were injured, including children. On March 10th, the local Wafa news agency reported that Israeli aircraft opened fire on Palestinians on agricultural land in the Al-Zuwaida area in central Gaza, injuring at least 2. On Monday, Israeli forces bombed a tent camp in the same area of central Gaza, killing 2 women, Noor al-Shalalfa and Amal Shomali, and a 12-year-old girl, Salsabil Faraj. Amal Shomali was a 46-year-old mother and a correspondent for Qatar Radio. The Gaza government media office said that with Shomali's killing, the number of reporters and media workers killed since October 2023 now stands at 261. Amal Shomali's loved ones, including her young daughter, mourned over her body hours later. Reporter Salma Kadumi captured this footage. On March 8th, 3 Palestinians were killed and others were injured in western Gaza City near Al-Azhar University after a car traveling in the area was hit by an Israeli strike. Gruesome footage, which I won't show here, includes 2 bodies which were severely burned and one laying face down on the ground with a trail of blood flowing meters down the street. Reporter Musab al-Sharif filmed family members and loved ones mourning over one of the men's bodies in the morgue at Al-Shifa Hospital. On March 7th, Israel killed Ahmed al-Qudra in a drone strike in Khan Yunis while he walked his 4-year-old daughter, Julia, home from kindergarten. Julia was severely injured in the strike that killed her father instantly, and after 2 days of doctors attempting to save her life in the hospital, she died. Reporter Hani Al-Sha'ir captured footage of little Julia's body wrapped in a shroud and dressed in her new Eid clothes, including a shiny new bracelet that was placed on top of her body, which she would have worn at the end of Ramadan, as her relatives mourned around her.
والله تسعة يوم والثاني هي في الاخر يوم ما ازل لحقت الدغري يوم والثاني والله عارف الحمد لله حبيبي يا الله يما يرضى عليك.
On March 6th, a 13-year-old child was killed. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜 was shot and killed by Israeli gunfire in the town of Beit Lahia in northern Gaza. This photo was obtained by writer Mossab Abu Toha from the boy's uncle. Since the fraudulent ceasefire was declared in October 2025, at least 650 Palestinians have been killed and more than 1,730 injured as of Wednesday, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Israel has maintained its draconian closure of all but one of the crossings in and out of Gaza since the U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran began on February 28th. The United Nations Human Rights Office stated that the only operational crossing point is Kerem Shalom or Karmi Abu Salem in southern Gaza. Quote, this long route is slower and more costly and increases reliance on scarce fuel inside Gaza, where movements take place on damaged roads, the UN said. The exit from Gaza of patients who need medical evacuations and the return of Palestinians from abroad remain suspended, the UN added. Palestinians are rushing to stock up on essentials as soaring prices and shortages of key items, particularly vegetables, signaled the impact of the closures, writes reporter and Electronic Intifada contributor Ahmed Dremli this week in Middle East Eye. Dremli adds, quote, but most residents of Gaza can buy only enough for a single day as prices soar and purchasing power plummets. Rana Rajab, 38, a mother of 6, fears that the closure of Gaza's crossings could bring famine back, yet her family cannot afford more than daily supplies. Her husband works as a mechanic on a daily wage, meaning income and access to food varies from day to day. Since the ceasefire began, we have been suffering from poverty and hunger, Rajab told Middle East Eye. On the days my husband works, we buy food. On the days he doesn't, we rely on charity kitchens or whatever aid we can find. Rising prices have worsened the situation. Many goods, especially vegetables, have doubled in price, she said. Meanwhile, basic infrastructure such as water, electrical, and sewage services remain in ruins after nearly 2.5 years of genocide. On March 6th, reporter Ala Hamouda spoke to children in the Tal al-Hawa neighborhood of Gaza City who struggle to obtain water under the current circumstances. One child with a broken cart says, quote, we fill up water, go over there, and come back. We're completely worn out by the water situation. The reporter asks how many times a day he does this, and the child responds, quote, we come back, we find more water, and go again. Jorge Moreira da Silva, the head of the United Nations Infrastructure Management Agency, UNOPS, stated that on March 5th, one of the agency's tankers was on its way to collect fuel for distribution inside Gaza and was struck from, quote, the direction of the sea. He did not name the attacker, but only Israeli naval ships are stationed there. No one was injured, Da Silva added, but the tanker was directly hit and damaged, and he called for a full investigation into the incident. The day after, the Israeli army admitted that its naval forces indeed struck the fuel tanker, but claimed it was, quote, unintentional. Euromed Human Rights Monitor released a report this week on Israel's ongoing obstruction of education in Gaza, 28 months into the genocide. Quote, through systematic and deliberate policies aimed at preventing the population from restoring education. These policies, the rights group notes, quote, include the ongoing blockade, the targeting of civilian objects, including educational facilities, through bombing and destruction, the prevention of reconstruction, and the obstruction of the entry of materials, equipment, and operational resources needed to rehabilitate and run schools and universities. As a result, hundreds of thousands of students remain cut off from formal education. Euromed says that, quote, this entrenches scholasticide within a broader policy of destroying the foundations of life in the enclave and stripping society of its ability to survive and recover, while advancing forced displacement and the coercive reshaping of the demographic and social reality. The rights group has so far documented the killing of nearly 19,000 school pupils and more than 1,300 higher education students, in addition to the injury of thousands more students of every age who sustained varying injuries. Furthermore, Israeli army attacks have killed 794 teachers and 246 university faculty members and researchers, while injuring thousands more. The Israeli army directly bombed 668 school buildings, completely destroyed 179 public schools, and severely damaged 118 others, in addition to bombing and vandalizing 100 schools administered by UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees. A total of 63 university buildings were completely destroyed, with severe damage inflicted on the remaining universities and colleges, Euromed says. And marking International Women's Day, Amnesty International released a report on the impact that Israel's genocide has had and continues to have on women's reproductive health in Gaza. Women have been forced to give birth without adequate medical care, to endure pregnancy and postpartum recovery while displaced in overcrowded and unsanitary sites, and to navigate hunger, disease, and trauma with little privacy, protection, or access to essential services, often while caring for others, the report states. Agnes Callamard, Amnesty International's Secretary General, stated, quote, women in Gaza are being denied the conditions needed to live and to give life safely. This systematic erosion of their rights to health, safety, dignity, and a future is not an unfortunate byproduct of war. It is a deliberate act of war targeting women and girls. It is also the foreseeable consequence of Israel's calculated policies and practices of multiple mass displacement, deliberate restrictions on basic and essential items, as well as humanitarian relief, and 2 years of relentless bombardment that have devastated Gaza's health system and decimated entire families. There has been a total collapse of maternal and neonatal health services, the report states, as 60% of all health service points remain non-functional, and as immense pressure is placed on the few that remain operational and the fewer that provide emergency obstetric care. Nearly 50% of all medications remain at zero stock, including drugs for managing and inducing contractions, labor and postpartum hemorrhage, anesthesia and pain management, infections, and respiratory conditions, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza. Medical personnel interviewed by Amnesty International said that even since the so-called ceasefire, quote, women who give birth endured extreme shortages of food, medicines, and nutritional supplements during much of their pregnancy and postpartum. They said that most women who come to deliver in hospitals suffer from anemia because of malnutrition and from waterborne diseases, vaginitis, and other infections because of polluted water and unsanitary conditions. In the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 obstetric department, neonatologist Dr. Nasser Bulbul said in the Amnesty report that the number of high-risk pregnancies they receive has significantly increased as mothers' immune systems have been compromised because of malnutrition. Quote, displacement conditions have led to infectious diseases, and most women come here under stress, trauma, and uncertainty, having suffered multiple displacements, lost loved ones, and unable to obtain the nutritious food they require, he said. Agnes Calamard said that, quote, women in Gaza are holding families and communities together under conditions designed to break them. They are the teachers providing schooling to children in tents, the doctors and nurses working in field hospitals, often without pay, and the caregivers fighting tirelessly to keep hope alive amidst genocide. Their courage commands immense respect and stands as an inspiration to all of humanity, she added. She called on states to take meaningful action to end Israel's genocide and on unlawful occupation, quote, including by ensuring women and girls can access their fundamental rights and securing a future where all Palestinians can live in dignity. Turning to the occupied West Bank, Israeli settlers killed at least 5 Palestinians in attacks this week. On Sunday, March 8th, 2 Palestinians were shot and killed by Jewish Israeli settlers in the village of Khirbet al-Bufalah, northwest of Ramallah, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Fareh Jawdat Hamayel and Thaer Farouk Hamayel were both shot in the head. The Wafa news agency reported that a third Palestinian, 55-year-old Mohammed Hassan Murrah, later died from the fumes of tear gas fired by Israeli soldiers who accompanied the settlers. Later on Sunday, 27-year-old Amir Mohammed Shanran was killed by settlers after an attack in Masafar Yatta, south of Hebron. Community resident and activist Mohammed Horeini uploaded this video of the attack. Mohammed Rabai, head of the village council in nearby Atuani village, told Agence France Presse that settlers had entered homes in the area and attacked Shanran and his family before killing him. Al Jazeera reported that Israeli settlers shot and killed a man and wounded his brother during an attack in the village of Wadi al-Rakim in the south. On March 6th, activist and journalist Adel Shoko reported from the village of Duma during a settler attack. Along with this video, Shoko stated, quote, settlers in Duma were shooting at Palestinians, attacked solidarity activists, and beat a Palestinian man with bats. When the Israeli army arrived, they arrested me and 4 Palestinians. One of them is a 13-year-old boy. Another was injured and needed an ambulance, but instead was taken to jail. Now all the activists have been forced from Duma, which led to settler pogroms and eventually expulsion of Palestinian families. That's from Adel Shoko. The Israeli military says it is dropping charges against 5 soldiers who were accused of sexually assaulting a Palestinian detainee in an attack by a group of soldiers at the notorious Sidi Tayman torture camp that was partially caught on camera in July 2024. As we reported, when footage of the rape was leaked to the press, the UN Human Rights Office stated that it has, quote, documented a number of videos in recent months which show gross violations of the rights of Palestinians detained by Israel, including acts of ill treatment, torture, sexual violence, and rape. My colleague Ali Abunimah wrote that, quote, the Sidi Tayman video led to outrage in Israel, not about the attack it showed, but in defense of the soldiers. It sparked right-to-rape protests by Israelis demanding the soldiers' release, while senior officials justified their actions. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐿, the Israeli military prosecutor who leaked the video in a failed effort to tamp down the outrage over the soldiers' arrests, resigned and was arrested and placed in home detention. Meanwhile, the soldiers accused of the rape continued to be treated as heroes. We've published many features in the last week, but we wanted to highlight Lost Paperwork Prompts Fears for Property Rights by Malak Hijazi, writing from Gaza. When Aziza al-Mashouki, 62, a retired teacher, fled Rafah in May 2024, she left behind her house deeds, marriage certificate, and family photo albums, Hijazi writes. Quote, months later, displaced in Egypt, she learned that everything was gone. her home, her papers, her pictures, all proof of what her life had been. Thousands of families in Gaza face similar losses. A survey conducted by the Palestinian Housing Council between May and July 2025 found widespread loss of ownership papers. In Gaza City, 71% of respondents reported losing their property documents, while in Khan Yunis and Rafah, up to 83% of women reported losing theirs. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 never imagined she would be leaving her home forever. It never occurred to me to take the house papers with me. Many displaced people were sheltering in our home, so we left it for them. I didn't think the house would ever be destroyed. When 𝐓𝐡𝐞 left Rafah in May 2024, the city was sheltering over 1 million internally displaced Palestinians and had become a temporary humanitarian refuge facing an impending Israeli ground invasion, which former U.S. President Joe Biden described as a red line. The invasion went ahead. Biden did nothing to prevent it and nothing to punish Israel for crossing his red line. Now, more than 90% of Rafah's neighborhoods have been completely or partially destroyed, with Israeli forces maintaining heavy military control over much of the city, preventing 2/3 of residents from returning to what is left of their homes. We don't have digital copies of our ownership documents, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 told the Electronic Intifada via WhatsApp. We worry that our right to the house will be lost because we have no proof it belongs to us. Neighbors can testify, but the fear remains. For now, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 has no plans to return to Gaza. There is nothing left, but she emphasizes that if reconstruction ever takes place, she would return without hesitation because, quote, a person has nothing but their homeland. In addition to individual documents, Israel also destroyed the central archives of Gaza municipality in November 2023, erasing centuries of property records, maps, and historical documents in yet another of Israel's countless violations of the laws of war. The Gaza municipality told the Electronic Intifada via email that they have launched electronic services and interactive maps to assist residents. Any citizen who previously had documents archived at Gaza municipality can apply to obtain digital copies of these documents, the municipality added. While residents struggle to reclaim what they have lost, plans for Gaza's future are also being drawn up, far from the people who live there. In January, the U.S. president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, presented AI-generated images of a new Gaza at the World Economic Forum in Davos, envisioning residential towers, data centers, luxury resorts, parks, sports facilities, and a new airport. These proposals include no indication of how the rights of those who have lost everything will be recognized or protected, or how displaced people can reclaim their homes in areas behind the yellow line. Under Palestinian and international law, the right to property is inherent and does not vanish if documents are lost, says Abdallah Sharshara, a Palestinian lawyer and human rights advocate. But without documents, claiming rights in courts or government offices is much harder. It creates serious obstacles in registration, compensation, and protection from encroachment, especially in systems that exploit legal gaps to dispossess Palestinians, he told the Electronic Intifada. The destruction of legal records follows a dangerous historical pattern. After the 1948 Nakba, hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians lost the documents that proved their ownership. Even those that held on to their documents found them useless, as Israel later instituted the 1950 Absentees Property Law, which classified displaced Palestinians as absentees and transferred their land and homes to the state, enabling mass confiscation and causing today's unresolved Palestinian refugee issue, afflicting millions of people. Today, international law provides broader, largely theoretical protections, but their effectiveness remains dependent on political will and actual enforcement, Sharshara said. The new Gaza proposal heightens fears. It treats Gaza as a blank slate, disregarding Palestinians who lost their homes and documents, as well as Gaza's heritage and history, while allowing outside investors to shape Gaza's future without protecting residents' rights. Those are excerpts from Lost Paperwork Prompts Fears for Property Rights by Malak Hijazi, writing from Gaza on electronicintifada.net. And now, as we always do, we wanted to highlight people expressing joy, determination, and reclamation across Palestine and around the world. Journalist Salma Kaddoumi, whose footage we highlighted earlier, not only reports from scenes of unbearable pain and grief, but also from places where young Palestinians find relief and strength. On International Women's Day, Kaddoumi spent time with girls who are learning the art of boxing. She captioned this video, quote, "Boxing is a refuge for the girls of the tents, where they find a space to breathe away from the atmosphere of tension and psychological pressure."
Stop! Reverse! شمال اثنين 1 2 1 2 4 بام 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 4
That's from reporter Salma Kaddoumi, and that's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza. You're watching the Electronic Intifada live stream. I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleague Ali Abunimah. Hi, Ali.
Hi, Nora. Thank you for keeping us up to date on what's happening in Palestine. And, it's so disgusting, but the least surprising news in the world that Israel has dropped the charges against those 5 soldiers accused of raping and torturing a Palestinian. Of course, we know that case, they only brought charges in that case because a video leaked and it made international headlines. And as so many people predicted at the time, they will quietly drop it if they don't just give them a slap on a wrist. But that case is only the tip of the iceberg. But it just goes to show Israel, the perpetrators of genocide, cannot investigate itself, cannot bring itself to justice. That's why we need international justice.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, the only person that was at all punished in whatever way for that one of countless crimes of sexual violence by Israelis against Palestinians was the former prison guard who leaked the video. She was detained.
The prosecutor.
The prosecutor. That's
prosecutor,
right. The prosecutor. Yeah.
Because she leaked it, not because of.
It's typical.
It's a genocidal fascist society.
Yes. Protecting those who do the genocide and the sexual assault of Palestinians. We have an enormous amount of content in our show today, so let's get into it. We caught up with Roqayah Chamseddine, the wonderful journalist, researcher, and co-host of the Delete Your Account podcast, who spoke to us from Lebanon yesterday. We recorded this at a time when she was able to join us. So let's go to that interview, and then we'll come back and have your analysis and Jon's analysis.
I'm Ali Abunimah, here with my colleague Nora Barrows-Friedman. You're watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada live stream. Since the United States and Israel launched their war of aggression aiming to topple the government of Iran on February 28th, Lebanon has once again become a major front line of confrontation. On March 2nd, the resistance group Hezbollah launched rockets and drones against Israeli military targets. This followed the US-Israeli murder of Iran's leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and more than 10,000 Israeli violations of a so-called ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon signed in November 2024, along with the continued Israeli occupation of Lebanese territory in violation of that agreement. Israel has launched a bombing campaign across Lebanon's south and east, particularly in the southern suburb of Beirut, striking homes and infrastructure in densely populated neighborhoods. Lebanese authorities report that almost 600 people have been killed and more than 1,400 wounded since the escalation began, while over 750,000 people are displaced, mostly from the south, as families flee Israeli bombardment. Aid agencies warn that hospitals are overwhelmed and the country faces a deepening humanitarian crisis as hundreds of thousands seek shelter in schools, vehicles, and improvised camps. In Nebishit, in the eastern Bekaa Valley, on the night of March 6th to 7th, Israeli helicopters inserted a commando unit that attempted to dig up a grave in a cemetery, searching for the remains of an Israeli military pilot who has been missing for decades. The infiltration was discovered, and Hezbollah fighters and local residents confronted the invaders. Israeli warplanes launched dozens of airstrikes to cover the withdrawal of the troops. The airstrikes and fighting killed at least 41 people and wounded around 40 in Nebishit, and the Israeli forces withdrew. Hezbollah is responding to Israel's attacks on Lebanon with sustained rocket, missile, and drone fire against Israeli military positions and settlements. Israel has admitted it is having difficulty intercepting the group's drones. We'll be hearing more about the military situation from our colleague Jon Elmer later in the program. Politically, the escalation has intensified divisions inside Lebanon. The Western-backed government has attempted to outlaw Hezbollah, accusing it of drawing the country into a wider war. The movement and its supporters insist Israel's repeated violations of Lebanese sovereignty make armed resistance unavoidable. The only question, they say, is whether Israel should be allowed to choose the moment of a major escalation or whether the resistance should take the initiative. Joining us now from Lebanon is Roqayah Chamseddine. She is a southern Lebanese researcher and reporter and co-host of the 𝐶 𝐄𝐥𝐞 podcast. She herself has been forcibly displaced from Dahia, Beirut's southern suburb, and she joins us now from Beirut. Roqayah, welcome to the Electronic Intifada live stream.
Thank you so much for having me on again. I'm honored to be here with y'all.
So good to have you again, Roqayah.
Thanks, Roqayah. As I just said, you are displaced. Describe for us what you have experienced since the March 2nd escalation and what the situation is right now for people in Beirut, especially those from the Dahia and the south of the country.
So since March 2nd, this is the latest Israeli aggression, an extension of the ongoing over 16th month aggression against Lebanon. The very fabric of daily life in Beirut, not just in Dahia, but in the southern regions and in the Bekaa Valley, has been violently targeted by the U.S. and Israel. And I want to make that clear. This isn't just Israel, because the U.S. is more or less leading the charge here, but families have been this is a forcible displacement. We are being ethnically cleansed. No one is heeding Israeli warnings. They are telling us we are going to bomb your neighborhoods. We're going to bomb the houses, the residential buildings. And if you've ever been to Dahia, if you've ever seen photos of Dahia, the buildings are nestled very close to one another. So if there is a so-called targeted bombing, I don't even like describing it that way, it will knock out other buildings, other stores. People have been forced to leave behind every possession they have. But at the same time, I've witnessed a lot of, our community is very resilient. We've been forced to be resilient, but displacement has become a daily condition for over 700,000 people. And those are just the people that have registered as being forcibly displaced. I think that what's happening and what I've seen, there are people sleeping in front of the ocean. There are people sleeping on top of buildings outside of Dahia and 𝐓𝐡𝐞. But again, we understand that we need to be resilient, and this resilience is inseparable from the resistance. And we understand that we're going to remain as strong as possible in order to continue this. So I mean, the one positive that I've seen out of all of this is just how strong our community has been despite what we've been forced to endure. And today, as we're speaking, Israel has announced that they will bomb Dahia and 𝐓𝐡𝐞 and multiple places in surrounding areas, places that we walk every single day, places that we have raised our families every single day. So this is what we're forced to endure, and we're forced to endure it in the shadows of, as you said, a complicit government which has abandoned us.
We'll talk more about the government and the politics in Lebanon in a bit, Roqayah. But right now, I want to ask you about how people from the south and from the southern suburb of Beirut, how are they being treated in different parts of the country? Are people welcoming them? Are people making efforts to provide refuge, shelter, food, and so on for this enormous number of displaced people? It's something like almost a quarter of Lebanon's population.
Right. And while there have been people who have been offering food and shelter, because people need to understand these are not just individual. Whenever there was the first announcement to hit Dahi, I was actually on the road. All of a sudden, in the taxi, everyone was wondering why the traffic had stopped, and it was because Abichai had announced that everyone needs to leave Dahi now because they're going to hit Dahi. And I want people to picture that. No warning really, and then being told everything you have, you're going to lose it. Everything wherever you're coming from, you need to leave. People are walking on foot from different villages in South Lebanon, walking on foot from Dahi. And while Lebanon is small, the areas are massive. So you were walking for hours. People abandoned their vehicles out of fear of what was coming. So there have been people opening their homes and offering food and shelter and what have you. But at the same time, there is a large portion of this country who are being discriminatory against those from South Lebanon. They will discriminate against you based on your accent, based on the way that some women wear their hijab, because they wear it a certain way in the southern villages. So, and then they're charging 6 months rent and charge as if they're a hotel. You can live here, but I need 6 months. I need you to pay for management services, whatever that is, cleaning services, or they're refusing to let you stay at all because of where you're from. They say out of fear that Israel will target the buildings, but it is a form of discrimination that this community has faced for decades. It did not begin now.
Roqayah, in the introduction, Ali talked a little bit about the Israeli attack in the town of Nabi Shit in the eastern Bekaa Valley. You went there yourself just a few days ago. You posted a brief video on social media. Let's watch it and then tell us about what you saw in the town and what people told you about the Israeli invasion and attack. Let's go to that video.
I'm in the village of Nabi Shit, reporting from the Israeli attack.
Tell us what we saw just there, and these images that you sent us are also from the village. Tell us about the attack.
So the attack occurred a few days ago. If I remember correctly, because all the days are running together, it was around the 7th or 8th of March. There was an overnight incursion into the village of Nabi Shit, nearby the village of Nabi Shit, and the incursion was stopped. A full expansion into the village was stopped by not only Hezbollah, but locals, residents. The town, once you go into the town, the heart of the town, the mayor's house was completely bombed. The bombing was so intense. There's images that I took of the vehicles. They were actually up into the buildings, into the height of the buildings. What you're seeing right now, that's like four levels, and the vehicles were all the way up top. The crater was so massive, it reminded me of the attacks that happened in 𝐓𝐡𝐞 in Dahi, the one that killed Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. That was something that I was reminded of whenever the Israelis went in to allegedly get the remains of the pilot. His name is Ron Arad. I frankly don't care what his name is. They went in, and the people that were there around the cemetery, they noticed that there was digging, something was happening. And one story I want to tell people that I'm going to try and cover in depth later is that a woman with her family, her children, I believe her oldest son was in his 20s, saw what was happening, and she pulled out her gun. I don't know what type of gun, but she had a gun, and they approached her house where her children were, and she shot at them. She shot I was told that at least 2 of them were shot by her. I don't know what happened to them, but they ended up killing her and killing all of her children. And that was near the cemetery that they were digging. And the cemetery belongs to the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 family. And one of the members of the 𝐓𝐶 family was actually abducted. He's one of the prisoners being held and tortured by Israel. Currently, over 20 Lebanese citizens are being held in captivity, and our government has done and said nothing about them. But whenever I went into the village, this is in the eastern part of Lebanon. It is not South Lebanon. The area of Baalbek, the people there are known to be incredibly fierce, strong, and armed. Women and men, and even children, know how to defend their community in the eastern area of Lebanon. It is very beautiful, but everywhere I went in the village, there was signs of not just the attack that happened a few days ago, but attacks that happened before. At one of the sites where they killed 13 people, they had actually killed people nearby before, including children. The youngest person that they killed in the recent incursion and attack on Nabishit was only 2 years old. I watched as the casket went by. It was incredibly moving because of just how loved all of these people were. It's a very tight-knit community. Everyone knew everyone. I was honored to be able to speak and sit with a lot of the martyrs' families. One of them was a very old woman. She told me how her son was engaged for about 5 months, and they killed him before, his wedding was in 5 months, and they killed him before he was supposed to get married. And this also involved the Lebanese army, because before the Israelis went into the village, there was signs that something was happening. They were coming in. This is how disturbing this situation is. They were coming in wearing Lebanese army uniforms and an ambulance made to look like a Lebanese health authority ambulance. So this was pre-planned. And then a few days ago, they tried again to go into Nabishit and were prevented from doing so. So this was a collaborative effort by Hizb, the locals that were fighting, and also the army helped.
So, Roqayah, you're saying the Israelis tried to come in disguised as medics?
They tried to come in disguised as members of the Lebanese army, and yes, they used an ambulance to try and go in as well.
Which, of course, is a war crime under international law. It's a war crime to impersonate medical personnel. I believe it's even a war crime to wear the uniforms of another army. That's the crime of perfidy. Yes.
Right.
But it's
what
also,
they do in Palestine all the time.
I was going to say that we saw this tactic in Gaza at the most intense parts of the ongoing genocide. But of course, this is an army that has no red lines, has no morals, right, respects no law. Talk about just, it's been a few years, but I've been to Eastern Lebanon, and it is absolutely beautiful. I've also been to the south, and I've visited many of the villages there. And these are beautiful places. Talk about what you saw between, traveling to the Bekaa Valley and when you were in Nabishit. How widespread? We saw the pictures were pretty intense, but how widespread is the bombing? How present are the Israeli attacks on Lebanon right now?
So in the eastern part of Bekaa Valley, they're not just bombing different villages, they're also picking off members of the resistance or anyone associated. Some of them aren't even part of Hezbollah, using drone strikes. This is happening in Bekaa Valley. They're bombing the mountains, they're bombing the villages, they're bombing the roads, they're bombing roads that if you've been there, the area of eastern Lebanon, like South Lebanon, the way that they're built is that if you cut off one road, you can cut off all access to the entire village, which is something they intend to do. Whenever they hit Nabishit, they also hit an area where the water and the power was, intentionally trying to make it so this community, if the Israelis went in and stayed, they're going to be starved. They're going to be prevented from having any access to the outside world, because again, this is a very tiny village they already have a rough time getting in and out of these places. And I want to briefly talk about South Lebanon. my village, Arab Salim, I've written for Electronic Intifada about Arab Salim before. They've hit our village at least 5 times in the last week and a half. They killed 4 members of my extended family in 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿, which is outside of Arab Salim. They had just built their house. I believe they just newly built a house there, and they targeted them while they were having either suhoor or iftar. It happened at night, and they killed everyone. The 2 children, the mother and the father. So this is what we're dealing with. And we're not the only family that has suffered this. And in Eastern Lebanon, they've taken out entire families, including today. They killed at least 7 people. They're killing paramedics. They're doing double tap strikes. They're trying to make it so not only are they going to ethnically cleanse us, but they're putting a price on being in solidarity with the resistance. That's also why they're hitting ضاحية. If people think they're hitting Hizb infrastructure in ضاحية, you're kidding yourself. They're doing this in order to extract a price. They're saying, if you want to support Hezbollah, we're going to take everything from you. But if you, and I've interviewed hundreds of Lebanese people in and outside of Beirut who tell me, if I have to sleep in my car, if I have to sleep on the road, I'll do it because there's no other way. We've been killed for 15, 16 months and no one said anything. But as soon as Hezbollah fired those 6 or so rockets on the 2nd of March, the entire world said, no, no, no. They want to extract a price from us and we're willing to pay it no matter what happens.
Well, let's talk more about that. I don't know if it's right even to call it a debate inside Lebanon. It's certainly a very sharp division. The government of President Joseph Aoun and Prime Minister Nawaf Islam have declared that Hezbollah is now outlawed and must surrender its weapons. And in an unprecedented move, the government is also asking for direct negotiations with Israel on how to disarm Hezbollah. Hezbollah's leadership, including, of course, Secretary General Naim Qassem and its parliamentary leader, Mohammed Ra'ad, in the last few days have issued very strong statements rejecting this and insisting on the right to resist and saying, you know, if the army can't or won't defend us, people have the right to defend their land against occupation. This looks like, you know, this division has been there in Lebanon, but this seems like an unprecedented rupture, almost like a point of no return. Talk about what's happening politically, your view of the government's moves, and give us some more about how people are reacting. You just talked a bit about what people are telling you, but give us more insight into this development.
So the political maneuvers by the government, namely Joseph Aoun and Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, like you said, they've declared Hezbollah illegal, and they want to openly. We've known they're negotiating through what's called the mechanism under the table with indirect and sometimes maybe even direct talks. It's a bit shady there, but this reveals that there is a fracture within the state apparatus and the tensions inherent in Lebanon that continue to exist under the shadow of imperial design. So there's no ambiguity here. Hezbollah's weapons are not an instrument of political contestation. They're a shield. They're the only defense that we have. That's it. The Lebanese army, they set up their tents all across the southern Lebanese villages. And what happened? They pulled out. The government told them to leave. So what are we supposed to do? The government's saying, we're not going to protect you. The Lebanese army is not going to protect us. So again, the only shield we have is Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is the tangible expression of our right to resist occupation and to defend our people against a history of foreign aggression that stretches back before the time of during the time of Jabal Amen, when Lebanese people were resisting alongside Palestinians. And as you mentioned, Sheikh Naim Qassem and parliamentary leader Mohammed Ra'ad have consistently affirmed that the resistance is a national duty and a moral imperative, one that can't be disarmed at the behest of those who would leave Lebanon exposed and vulnerable. The Lebanese state is begging to have this be over and done with, while also not giving us any guarantees that we'll be safe. Because as we've seen, before this current situation, they killed over 350 people. I was making a list of their names every day. So demand that we surrender in the midst of a war is to ask us to abandon the principles of self-determination that define our history, and then to accept this logic of submission And you, the saying that we have, "Hayhat min al-zilla," is I would rather die than face this humiliation. So every missile Hezbollah launches, every defensive action that they take is an assertion that Lebanon is not a colony and that our people are not subjects to anyone, whether that be this Mahmoud Abbasian state that we have, and that our resistance is rooted in the consciousness of oppression and the pursuit of liberation. Sheikh Naim Asim said, "That's it. We're not going to give up our weapons. We're warning you that we can only tolerate so much. So what do they expect us to do?" So this is a continuation of a struggle that's both ethical and existential to us. And so to disarm under these conditions would be to erase the memory of all those who have resisted before us and to hand our people the inheritance of subjugation, and we refuse.
Roqayah, we have just a couple of minutes, but you're listening to you describe the situation in Lebanon, where you have this division between resistance and essentially collaborators. We see that also in Palestine. You mentioned Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, which collaborates openly with Israel and considers the resistance to be criminal. We also see it on a regional level now, as the United States and Israel are waging this war of aggression against Iran and are being backed by Arab states in the region, by quite a number. Put what's happening in Lebanon in the regional context. How do you see what's happening with Iran? Is this an inevitable battle or war that has been building up for a while, or is it another episode in this series of start-stop escalations that we've been all living with for so long? What are your thoughts on the war with Iran?
I think this is part of an ongoing battle that the resistance has been preparing for in the long run. And what we're seeing with the attacks on Dubai, the attacks on Bahrain, Kuwait, a lot of people on the outside are wondering why Iran is targeting these areas. But these are vassal states that have, how do I put this, that have been taking advantage of the bloodshed in the region, that have been benefiting and profiting off of the bloodshed in the region. And they've been watching as our communities are torn apart, for not just in Lebanon, but in Gaza and in wider Palestine. They've been watching and they've been benefiting from it financially. So this, in my opinion, was inevitable and it's much deserved. The Gulf regimes deserve what is happening to them because they have refused to be anything more than at the behest of the United States. And Iran has basically put a price on it. They've said, okay, you want to be a vassal state, you want to hold these US interests, you want to have these bases, we're going to extract as much pain from what you are doing, because this is, it sounds harsh to a lot of people, but this is much deserved. And we've been waiting to watch Dubai burn. After everything that they've done to us and to Sudan, by the way. So I think that if Iran, and in my opinion, they will come out triumphant, this will put an end to a lot of the bloodshed that we've been enduring for decades.
And just to say, of course, that, none of us want to see people who are uninvolved hurt or injured in any country. That's not what we want, but we're speaking, of course, in terms of the regional and geopolitics.
Absolutely. These are colonies. These are people that have basically made sure that they will pocket as much money from what's happening. And they thought that having a US base in their country would keep them safe. And Iran has blasted through that mythology.
Mm-hmm. Roqayah, for people who have been not grasping the enormity of this existential, war, really for the Palestinians, for Lebanese, for Iranians, for for people who are resisting, that not just the tip of the spear that is Israel of the Western imperial project, but the US, which is, of course, the spear itself. Talk about how important Iran has been in terms of supporting the Lebanese resistance, and what would happen if the U.S. and Israel were to, enact this sort of greater Israel project across the region and try and turn Iran into yet another, Western vassal state. How important is Iran to Lebanon right now?
It's incredibly important because it's the final frontier in this battle against Israel and the United States. And without Iran, not only would the Lebanese resistance, Hezbollah, Harakat Amal even, but a lot of Palestinian groups who have benefited from financial, political support from Iran, it would undermine everything that has been happening for the last however many decades that Iran has been supporting the Palestinian people and the Lebanese people. Because again, in Lebanon, the Lebanese army is not even allowed to use the weapons that they have, which are old, to target Israel. That's actually written in the agreement that our state has with the lovely Americans. So what do we have? We have Hezbollah. That's what we have. And the Palestinians have Hamas, and they have the PFLP, and they have the numerous other resistance groups that have been supported by Iran. Iran has not benefited from supporting the Palestinians or the Lebanese people. It's the total opposite. The more that they've supported us, the more pain that the U.S. has inflicted on them by way of sanctions and now by way of killing over 1,300 people, many of them children. So if we lose Iran, it will be more devastating than losing Syria, which is now under the government of former Al-Qaeda leader Jolani. So if Iran falls, the region falls, and this is not an exaggeration.
Roqayah,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Ali.
yeah, the stakes couldn't be higher, and we're so grateful to you for your reporting, and we pray for your safety and the safety of everyone in Lebanon, and we hope you'll come back on. And for people who want to follow your reporting, what are the best ways for them to do that?
You can follow me on Twitter. You can share the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 on Twitter. I'm also working at the Cradle, and I've been posting live updates here and there on the situation. So Twitter is probably the best place that you can find me.
And of course, delete your account with
Yes, with Kumar.
Yes.
That's the podcast, Delete Your Account. It's a really great in-depth discussion, not to be missed. And you are keeping incredibly busy and doing tremendously important reporting that we are not getting from too many places right now in Lebanon. And you're doing it while you're displaced and suffering all of the same the same difficulties that so many people in Lebanon are facing, and you are still keeping this up. We're so grateful to you, Roqayah. Please stay as safe as you can, and thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you all so much, and I can't wait to come back on. Inshallah, next time all of our villages will be liberated when I come back on.
Exactly. Thank you, Roqayah. Such an intense and incredible report from Roqayah there.
Yeah, and just a couple of quick updates. A few hours after we recorded that interview with Roqayah last night, Israel carried out a double tap strike at the Ramlat al-Bayda beach in Beirut, where many displaced people were sleeping in tents. This video is from the Cradle, which of course is the outlet that Roqayah also reports for. Witnesses in Ramlat al-Bayda say they were sleeping in their tents when the roar of the jets woke them. Al Jazeera's correspondent Heidi Pett reported from Beirut. There was one impact and they popped their heads out of their tents in time to see the second one. She said at least 8 people were killed and another 31 injured, according to Lebanese authorities. Israeli attacks also killed several more people in other parts of Lebanon overnight, and those attacks appear to be intensifying in the last few hours. There's also been a potentially significant move against the US-backed Lebanese government's moves to try to use the Lebanese army to forcibly disarm Hezbollah. The newspaper Al-Akhbar is reporting today that there is a strong pushback from senior officers that has forced the government to shelve any such plan for now. At the same time, a number of officers calling themselves patriotic officers put out a statement warning against any plan to use the army to confront the Lebanese public or internal political forces. In the statement, the officers say, placing the army in confrontation with the sons of the nation or assigning it the task of pursuing those who are confronting an external attack on the country constitutes a dangerous precedent that carries grave risks for the cohesion of the military institution and for national stability.
Oh.
So that's just some updates since we
And that's just in the last, 20 hours since we talked
Yeah.
to Roqayah. Incredible. Well, John will have some more updates on the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran and Israeli bombing of Lebanon, of course, later on in the show. But Ali, let's pivot to the war on Iran and get your analysis on the events over the last 6-7 days.
Thanks, Nora. And just a reminder that you're watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada live stream, and I'm Ali Abunimah. And since the US and Israel launched the war on Iran on February 28th, the Iranian people have endured a devastating assault that is striking far beyond military targets. Cities are being bombed, schools and hospitals damaged, and more than 1,000 civilians, including many children, have been killed. Ancient treasures from the Golistan Palace to historic quarters in Isfahan have been damaged. Oil depot strikes have filled Tehran's skies with toxic smoke, threatening public health and the environment. Iran is, of course, hitting back against Israel and US bases and interests across the region. As this war goes on, I want to step back and look at the question of how to achieve security from two major perspectives. One is the perspective of the Gulf states and other Arab regimes that are allied with the US and Israel. And on the other hand is Iran. And to do this, first I want to look at a few segments from a conversation that was recorded in July of 2024 at the Aspen Security Forum between Washington Post columnist David Ignatius and Sheikh Nasser bin Hamad Al Khalifa. He is the son of the King of Bahrain, as well as the country's national security advisor and commander of the Royal Guard. Of course, Bahrain is one of the Gulf states allied with the United States and Israel, and it was, or still is, at least on paper, a major US military base, the headquarters of the Fifth Fleet. And for context, this conversation was recorded about 8 months into the genocide in Gaza and a few months after Iran carried out its first True Promise operation, retaliating for Israel's bombing of Iran's diplomatic mission in Syria. So this first clip is Al Khalifa answering a question about why Bahrain signed up to the Abraham Accords. That's the Trump-sponsored agreements between various Arab states and Israel.
We are from the optimist camp, and when we went for the Abraham Accord, we didn't have a laundry list, and we didn't have any list that we wanted to achieve first of all, and then we would sign the Abraham Accords. Signing the Abraham Accords was basically one of the most important milestones that we have achieved. We have opened a channel with the Israelis and the officials and the Israeli government, and I see this is why we should continue, and this is why we should always keep an open door and the channel with the Israelis.
So that's Al Khalifa talking about the relationship with the Israelis. Now let's hear a clip of him answering a question about Bahrain's relationship with Iran and the possibility of diplomacy with Iran. Remember, this is in mid-2024.
Well, we are strong believers in two paths, deterrence and diplomacy as well. And in the art of diplomacy, we should always keep an open door. I know we have cut relations with Iran. We have zero contact with Iran. And I think talking to Iran, like what we have done during the Abraham Accords, talking to Israel, is always important for us, always important for the security of the region. We should always keep these channels open in order to get a proper structure for our security and stability and harmony in the region.
So he does go on to say that Bahrain has been talking to Iran, but the words that really stand out there are we cut relations with Iran, we have zero contact with the Iranians. And this is at the same time that Bahrain and other Gulf regimes were launching into this love affair with Israel and deepening the love affair in the midst of a genocide. And if you recall, last week we spoke about how Iran has never at any time attacked any of its Arab neighbors. So you have to keep that in mind when you hear about this zero contact policy and cutting off relations with Iran. Now, the next clip is Al Khalifa describing a security agreement between Bahrain and the United States called the Comprehensive Security Integration and Prosperity Agreement, signed in 2023, also known as CICIPA. So let's listen to him talking about what is the essence of that agreement.
CICIPA, it is one of the most important achievements we have achieved for the Kingdom of Bahrain and the United States. Why? Because it's not just military defense orientated, it is a comprehensive security integration, and also it has the prosperity agreement element in it. If you allow me, with my great memory, I had my notes with me, I would like to point 3 articles in that agreement, which are the most important things. And believe me, we have fought hard for those articles until we got them right. So Article 2, which is the most important thing, is defense and security cooperation. Article 3 is the economic, commercial, and trade cooperation. Article 4 is science, technology, and network security. Let me read out a paragraph from Article 2, and then I'll talk about it. I'm quoting CICIPA right now. Any external aggression or threat of external aggression against the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of any of the parties shall be a matter of grave concern to the other parties. In the event of external aggression or threat of external aggression against one party, the parties shall, in accordance with their respective constitutions and laws, immediately meet at the most senior levels to determine additional defense needs and to develop and implement appropriate defense and deterrent responses, as decided upon the parties, including in the economic, military, and/or political realms. The parties stand ready to immediately share available and appropriate information and intelligence in response to such an event.
So you can see he's very proud of this security agreement with the United States, where if Bahrain is attacked, the United States is going to rush to Bahrain's assistance, or at least to have meetings about rushing to Bahrain's assistance. And if the United States is attacked, Bahrain, which is roughly the size of O'Hare Airport in Chicago, is going to come to the defense of the United States. And Al Khalifa goes on to say that Bahrain was working to expand the same model across the region. So let's hear that clip now too.
Well, we are right now working on the expansion of this agreement and also letting other countries join the agreement. It started as a bilateral agreement, but it is eventually going to become a multilateral agreement and looking at a wider scope. It's not just the Middle East. So we are looking at showing that the United States has a lot of friends around the world, and this agreement should bring the true friends all together. Now, what's important about it is, I believe that this is the furthest the United States went in security guarantees to an Arab state. So this is why I hardly suggest that we should go forward. It is short of Article 5, but has all the guarantees.
So you can see there when Al Khalifa refers to Article 5, he's talking about Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which very famously obligates all NATO members to come to the assistance of any other NATO member that's attacked. So this mutual defense guarantee. So he's saying it's almost that. It's almost as strong as that, and he's very proud of it. Well, what does this mean in practice for Bahrain, and not just Bahrain, but other Arab regimes that are in a similar situation? We're focusing on Bahrain here because we have this interview, but you can apply the same logic to Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan, and other countries that are in this same basket. And so I'm going to skip back to an earlier part of the interview, because that's where we see what all this actually amounts to in terms of what Bahrain and the other Arab regimes are offering to the United States. This clip is about, it's a bit longer, it's about 3 minutes, but I think it's very revealing.
An important day in the Middle East that I don't think gets enough recognition is April 13 to 14, when Iran launched an attack on Israel turned out to be 100 ballistic missiles, probably 250 drones, and it was essentially completely stopped by integrated air defense and extraordinary performance by a number of air forces, obviously led by Israel. What's not widely understood is that 𝐓𝐡𝐞, starting several years ago, organized integrated air defense and radars, including countries in the Arab world, such as Bahrain. So that night of April 13 was an important one for Bahrain. And I'm sure our audience would be interested in hearing what that was like for you, what you knew about the Iranian threat as those missiles and drones were launched, and whether you think this air defense integration might be the beginning of some broader regional defense cooperation.
Well, deterrence is our key word, right, in all aspects when we speak about our region and its conflicts, and especially when we pinpoint Iran being within the mix. Don't forget, Iran is only 200 miles away from the Kingdom of Bahrain. We host the 5th Fleet Command over there with multinational commands as well. So we play a vital role in the deterrence and also the stability of the region. We are proud of it. It's been running on now for more than 75 years, which is a great achievement for the Kingdom of Bahrain. It wasn't only for the Kingdom of Bahrain, but also for the region. So I refer to my grandfather when he described the 5th Fleet as the mountain of fire that is protecting us from all threats. Well, that night in specific, you know, we were all in duty, and we are always in close contact with our colleagues and allies and the region itself. Thank God we have a proper integrated system, especially trying to cover our airspace. So this is excellent example for how we should come closer, how we should always integrate our efforts and always layer the map and make sure that we don't let loose any, I mean, we should airtight the region in specific. But there's so much details to go into that specific attack. We know many countries have been in charge of the deterrence itself, and we are proud as the Kingdom of Bahrain to be part of that integrated system.
So I just note the importance of that. On that night, many countries, as His Highness just said, including Bahrain, certainly including Jordan, were part of the defense that prevented the war. If those missiles had landed and hit their targets, we would have been in a very different situation.
So that's Nasser al-Khalifa, the son of the King of Bahrain, talking to Washington Post columnist David Ignatius in July 2024 at the Aspen Security Forum. And what you can see there is what what Israel and the United States got out of Bahrain's total subservience, and of course that applies to the other states in the region. What did Bahrain and the other Gulf states get? You heard the prince there saying that he considered the American Fifth Fleet to be the mountain of fire that would defend Bahrain against the supposed threat from Iran. Well, where is the Fifth Fleet now? It's not in Bahrain. It's not even in the Persian Gulf. I'm sure that Jon Elmer will be talking about that in a little while. So did they get the security they were promised? Did they get this almost NATO-like guarantee? I would argue that they got the opposite, and it's very clear from what's going on that it is precisely their alliance with the United States and Israel that made them into targets. It was their hostility and zero contact policy with Iran that led them to host US bases that were used to attack Iran, and that made them into targets. So this is a failed model of security. Whether they will wake up to that remains to be seen. Iran also appears to be re-evaluating its own security model, and that's what I want to look at next. I want to look at this briefing from March 11th, so that's yesterday as we're speaking, given by Ibrahim Zulfiqari, the spokesperson for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which of course is one of the major branches of Iran's military. It's in Farsi, which I don't speak, but I was able to listen to the Arabic interpretation provided by Al Jazeera, and I'm going to just summarize some of the key points that Zulfiqari makes. I think we can play the video just so you can see what it looks like.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. دشمنان آمریکایی صهیونی به دلیل شکست‌های پی در پی در تجاوز وحشیانه و مغرورانه ایران اسلامی.
Just summarizing the main points that I wrote down from what Zulfiqari says. He says, due to their successive defeats, the American and Israeli enemies are suffering a collapse in their morale and experiencing delirium. To Trump and the Zionist child killers and Mossad, we warned you repeatedly, you can start this war, but we, the armed forces of Iran, will be the ones who decide when it ends. Because Iran holds the initiative in the Strait of Hormuz, we do not need to close the Strait of Hormuz. The closure is due to what the Americans and Zionists have done to the states of the region. We emphasize that we will not permit 1 liter of oil to pass through the strait for the US, the Zionists, and their accomplices. Any ship working for them that tries to pass will be a legitimate target for us. Your strategy of hiding behind the states of the region and other states in West Asia is over. Hiding in civilian places and behind infrastructure will not shield your cowardly army from the trap you have placed yourselves in. Your bases and places will be targeted one after the other. The fire you started will burn you. The period of tit-for-tat strikes and successive strikes is over. We have entered a period of continuous strikes until you are punished and regret what you have done. For once, be honest and don't hide behind bravado. Admit that you are defeated. Admit your error. You have threatened to send your navies to this region. You tried getting close once, but our rockets forced you to flee. We were waiting for this from the first day of the war, so we could show you that your cowardly army is much weaker than you thought. You will not be able to use artificial measures to bring down oil prices. From the start of the war, we told you to get ready for $200 a barrel oil. You are the cause of the insecurity in the region. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic will not permit your forces to move in this area, and we will strike with full force. We will avenge the pure blood of our leader, women, children, and the innocents of Minab. So that's the speech from Zulfiqari yesterday. And the elements you see there, he says that the period of tit for tat is over. Iran is now going to strike until it's met its security goals. And we see this message reinforced today in the first speech from the new supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei, who is, of course, the son of the leader who was murdered by Israel and the United States in the opening attacks of this war. And there were brief or summaries published in the media, but while we've been on air, the Tasnim news agency published the entire text in Farsi. So what I'm reading is what I'm quoting is a machine translation, but it's pretty good. And obviously the speech is long, so I'm only going to point to a few excerpts that are relevant to this analysis, but a few other things I thought were interesting as well. So one thing that's quite remarkable is he says that Mujtaba Khamenei says that I must briefly state my situation and position regarding the vote of the esteemed Assembly of Experts. I, your servant, Sayyid Mujtaba Husseini Khamenei, learned about the result of the vote of the esteemed Assembly of Experts at the same time as you and through the Islamic Republic's television. So what he's saying there is he didn't seek this position. He didn't even know he was being nominated. The speech is quite long and interesting and directed at various audiences, internal and external. But the part that has so far been widely quoted and is relevant here addresses Iran's strategy in terms of the war. And he says here in the part addressing the armed forces of Iran, he says, "Dear brother warriors, the demand of the masses of the people is to continue the effective defense." And he says the lever of blocking the Strait of Hormuz must definitely continue to be used. He also addresses Iran's allies. He says, "I also sincerely thank the warriors of the Resistance Front. We consider the countries of the Resistance Front to be our best friends, and the cause of resistance and the Resistance Front are an inseparable part of the values of the Islamic Revolution. Undoubtedly, the solidarity of the components of this front will shorten the path to liberation from the Zionist sedition. As we have seen, the brave and faithful Yemen did not stop defending the oppressed people of Gaza, and the devoted Hezbollah has come to the aid of the Islamic Republic of Iran despite all obstacles, and the Iraqi resistance has also courageously taken the same line." So he is reaffirming Iran's commitment to resistance and to Palestine, and I think that's an important message and signal as to the direction that Iran and its leadership are going to continue to go. He addresses Iran's neighbors, which includes Bahrain and the other countries that we were just talking about. He says, "We have 15 neighboring countries by land or sea and have always been and are willing to have warm and constructive relations with all of them. But the enemy has been gradually establishing military and financial bases in some of these countries for years to secure its dominance over the region. In the recent attack, some military bases were used, and naturally, as we had explicitly warned, we simply attacked those bases without attacking those countries. From now on, we will inevitably continue to do so. Although we still believe in the need for friendship between ourselves and those neighbors, these countries must make their duty clear to the aggressors of our beloved homeland and the murderers of our people. I recommend that they close those bases as soon as possible, because they must have realized by now that the claim of establishing security and peace by America was nothing more than a lie." So you can see there the diametrically opposed visions of security that you have on the one hand the Gulf, Bahraini, Saudi, Kuwaiti, Qatari, etc. view that inviting the US and Israel in makes you safe, and Iran saying inviting Israel and the United States in puts you in danger and stands in the way of the friendly relations we want to have with you. So both visions are now being tested. Which one prevails will determine the future of the region for generations to come, and that is now being tested through force. Which side will be able to impose its will through war is essentially what we are seeing now. And undoubtedly, that is something that was forced by the US and Israel, but many people across the region are paying the price. So I want to now just go to what happened at the UN Security Council last night. Now, one person who seemed to understand the situation extremely well is Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. You might have seen this clip from a few days ago of him responding to a delegation of Arab ambassadors in Moscow, urging Russia to tell Iran to stop what they called unprovoked attacks on those Arab countries. And Lavrov's response was very skillful. And I'll just read a couple of excerpts of what he told them. He said, the Arab group on whose behalf you are speaking did indeed warn against escalation. Many of the Arab monarchies publicly said that things should not be taken toward a military solution and that they would not allow their airspace to be used. But when it all began, contrary to your repeated appeals to the United States and Israel, did you condemn what the United States and Israel started to do? Did you condemn the deaths of 170 girls in a school? We do not want the Gulf countries on whose behalf you speak to suffer. We believe that what is happening does not give our Arab colleagues any military advantage. But we also cannot accept the logic according to which Iran's actions are unacceptable, while everything the United States and Israel do is not even subject to discussion. Do you understand what I mean? Then he says, a country, referring to Iran, that is in the middle of negotiations is subjected to treacherous aggression, and yet it agreed to continue the negotiations. And finally, he says, simply saying that Iran has no right to do anything means that you are effectively encouraging the United States and Israel to continue. This is illogical. He says a lot more, but those are the parts I pulled out that illuminate, I think, the key points. So it was extremely disappointing that yesterday in the UN Security Council, Russia and China abstained on a completely one-sided resolution sponsored by Bahrain and other Arab states and backed by the United States, which strongly condemns Iran while remaining totally silent about the ongoing US-Israeli attack on Iran. Russia and China allowed this resolution to pass, just like they allowed Trump's so-called Board of Peace resolution to pass in November. And I want to share two reactions that I think sum things up correctly. The first is Professor Balakrishnan Rajagopal, and he is the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right to adequate housing. And he says, another Security Council resolution which undermines peace and security, condemning Iran exercising its right to self-defense while saying nothing about the illegal act of aggression against Iran by the US and Israel. I condemn it as illegal and unprincipled. And I also want to share the reaction of human rights lawyer Craig Mukhaibar, who we have regularly hosted on this program. And he writes, for the second time in 4 months, the UN Security Council has today bowed to the US empire and its vassals and ignored international law on its behalf, and neither Russia nor China have acted to stop it through their veto rights. In the middle of the unlawful and bloody US-Israel Axis aggression on Iran, the Council is entirely silent on the aggression and on Iran's charter-based right to defend itself. Instead of condemning the aggressors, it condemns only Iran for attacks on the territory of countries in the region hosting US military bases, some of which have been directly complicit in the aggression, proving once again how oil and money are valued more than sovereignty, human lives, or international law, the resolution gained a record number of sponsors. The Council has allowed genocide and serial aggression to continue for more than 2 years in the region without action, and has decided that oil prices are a step too far. I have to say I share those sentiments, and I find it baffling that Russia and China would veto this. They would have lost nothing by vetoing it. They could have vetoed it and said, now let's talk about a real resolution. And I've also heard people saying, oh, well, these resolutions don't really matter because they get ignored. And that's true. We saw multiple resolutions ordering Israel to stop its massacres in Gaza being ignored with no consequences. But that doesn't make them inconsequential because they legitimize a completely illegitimate situation. And if Russia and China don't think they're consequential, why do they show up at the Security Council and debate and vote? If they don't think the UN is important, they should leave it. But as long as they are there, they need to fulfill their responsibility, not just looking after their own national interests, but looking after broader interests, which is their responsibility as permanent members of the Security Council. So this was deeply, deeply disappointing.
Thank you so much, Ali, for that broad spectrum analysis. I mean, you know, I just keep thinking, like, I wish our corporate mainstream would do a fraction of the kind of, you know, connecting the dots and pointing out why and how Bahrain, for example, made the deal with, you know, the imperial core, and full well knowing that it wasn't going to get anything out of it except thrown under the bus. And I mean, it's remarkable how everything seems to be falling apart for the U.S. Politically in the Gulf, and who knows?
But you know, there's no limits. They have no limits, no red lines in terms of how far they're willing to go.
Absolutely.
To maintain their hegemony, to maintain their empire, and the brutality and ruthlessness that we saw in Gaza through 2.5 years of genocide is their model.
Yeah.
And they're now doing that gleefully in Lebanon, in Iran. I mean, bombing apartment buildings in Iran, bombing the school in Iran, bombing the oil
hospitals.
tanks. I mean, hospitals, you know, dozens of hospitals already. We spoke about that already last week. So no outcome is guaranteed. And what is Iran saying? You know, Iran has been so demonized, but all they have said and all they have been saying all along is we just want to live in peace.
Yeah.
We want good relations with our neighbors. And then, you know, that map that we always see, that meme of look how close Iran put itself to its US bases. Well, where are the bases? Iraq, Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan,
Qatar.
I thought I named Qatar.
Oh, maybe you did.
Pakistan, essentially, because, you know, Pakistan has been a CIA base of operations in the region for decades. So Iran is literally surrounded by countries that are, if not directly hostile, hosts to a country, the United States, that has been seeking to destroy Iran for almost 5 decades.
Yeah.
And if people can't see that, then they're just too influenced by either sectarian propaganda or other forms of propaganda that, you know, that just defy logic. And this is important. It's not just about Iran. I mean, Iran deserves peace and security like everyone else. Its people do. But nobody else in the region can have peace and security either. No one. And this is what's at stake, is whether people will be allowed self-determination and liberation and the right to live in their own land safely without the US and Israel murdering them at will.
Or sanctioning them for decades. Yeah, that's absolutely it. Thank you again, Ali. Let's bring Jon Elmer on to talk about the military aspect and analysis of all of this. Hey, Jon.
Hi, guys. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Jon.
Yeah. We went from Roqayah's report to
Great report.
Yeah, really, really incredible reporting from her, to Ali's broad spectrum political analysis. What are you going to be focused? I mean, last week was a monumental effort on your part, compiling videos just and analysis just of what was happening the first 100 hours or so of the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran. Now it has spread to the Lebanon front and U.S. bases in the region, as Ali was just talking about. What are you going to be focusing on?
I'm going to be focusing on all three of those fronts. Iran, Lebanon, and the Iraqi resistance are all in this battle now and coordinating in the battle. Interesting development in this last few days. I mean, I think in effect it was happening anyway, but pretty clearly happening now between the three groups. And it's a formidable, they have formidable capacity to cause damage, both in terms of proximity, but just so many targets in the region. They all have drone supplies, significant drone supplies. Yeah, this war is not going to get better for the U.S. as it goes on. I don't want to make predictions. The war can always escalate, but as it is right now, it's not going in the U.S. favor.
All right. Well, let's see how that is all panning out. Ali, do you want to do the honors?
Take it away, Jon.
All right. You are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I am Jon Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 888 of Israel's genocide in Gaza. It's the 13th day of the U.S. And Israel's war on Iran, and 10th day of this newest round of the war in Lebanon. I am reporting this on the afternoon of March the 12th. Things are moving quickly, but this report is covering the second week of the war. We'll start with the maps, as we always do. We got some new fresh ones for everybody to see, targeting of U.S. positions across the region, particularly in the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar there, Saudi Arabia. Those are two critical bases, and the CIA station in Riyadh that you see there targeted. Up through Kuwait has been hammered. Kuwait is a major hub of U.S. Forces in the region and has been since the early 1990s. A lot of targets all over Iraq, American bases all over the region of Iraq from the 2003 war. And then, of course, you can see Jordan there. That's Muwafaq al-Salti Air Base. That is the key expeditionary air base for the United States Air Force right now. And it's been targeted numerous times. We're going to get into what was targeted on those bases coming up. But if we take a look at the next map, you can see a little bit of a zoom in on, first, this shows just the proximity of these targets. Bahrain, Qatar, UAE. We're looking at a map that shows the Strait of Hormuz and Iran at the top, just within 50 to 100 kilometers from these major U.S. installations, multi-billion-dollar installations that are just getting hammered right now. As Ali reported in his solid report, the IRGC has promised not a liter of oil that will benefit the U.S., the Zionists, or their partners will pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but they've done that verbally. There has been no very limited military action. A number of tankers have been targeted, U.S. flagged tankers. But you can see the Strait of Hormuz, how tiny it is on that map, and that includes the territorial waters of Iran. If we look at the next map, you can see it from an even, this map shows, again, the targets in the region with a little bit more colorful outline there. You see the embassy in Riyadh, the CIA station was hit there, and that forced all CIA stations in the region to evacuate. Those are mostly set up in the embassies and consulates paths. So you can see them targeted on this map as well. And then this next map shows you the topography. And again, I don't want to predict the war can spiral out of control, but when you look at this map, first of all, the Strait of Hormuz is shown there in the dead center. When you take the territorial waters of Iran into question, you're talking like hundreds of feet of area that is international waters, easy to be closed. You can see that ships escorting tankers through that are going to be running a gauntlet of anti-ship missiles that are firing in some distances as close as you can throw a baseball, it looks like from this map. But also look at the country of Iran when we're talking about a ground war. You're talking about mountainous region. The core of the U.S. forces are down in the south. The capital is up in the north, also surrounded by mountains. It's just a completely different story than smashing Libya or smashing Syria, which itself took a decade to do. And you look at a full state like Iran, the size of the country, the depth that they have of human resources and military hardware. This war could escalate, but you can see the reasons why it may not when you look at this map there that you're seeing. And I just want to start here with a little bit of what the Americans and Israelis are doing. If we look at number 5, they decided this week to target oil depots. Strikes me as a sign of desperation to be hitting these installations so early. Things are not going as planned for the U.S. And Israel, and this was Israel targeting these. According to the Israelis, they have 80% of their air force targeting Iran and 20% targeting Lebanon right now. This happened on the weekend. The Red Crescent reporting 14,000 housing units damaged. 29 hospitals targeted, 9 of them destroyed or out of service, 65 schools targeted. So we're seeing, again, Israel being Israel here. Let's look at number 6, because of course this is basically chemical warfare. On the night of March 7th to the 8th, Israeli airstrikes hit multiple fuel depots and refineries across Tehran and the neighboring Al-Borz province, igniting vast pools of crude oil and refined fuel. The burning oil was sent into towering black plumes into the sky, releasing massive amounts of toxic hydrocarbons, along with sulfur and nitrogen oxides into the lower atmosphere. And we're looking at a graphic here put together by Reuters that shows the toxic plume taking over a city itself of 10 million, metropolitan area of 20 million. This is a world class city with its similar density to many of the world-class cities that you're thinking about right now. In the next slide, you can see that it starts to take over and spread as the toxic plume spread across Tehran. Sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide combined with moisture in the air, producing dangerous acid rain. It oil rained on them. Authorities warned residents to stay indoors as dense pollution and falling rain carried corrosive chemicals across the city. One more slide will show the impact on the human. The toxic particles are inhaled. Inhaling acidic particles could irritate the airways, aggravate asthma and bronchitis, and allow fine particles to reach the bloodstream where they can increase cardiovascular stress. I think that's all obvious. You don't want to be breathing oil smoke and being rained on by oil rain. And that is the kind of crimes that Israel just normalizes in their war fighting. And I like to just start with that so we understand the human toll of what's going on in this battle. Let's take a look at the Iranians for their part. These are their missiles and drones that they're using. Of course, the Shahed 136 is the primary tool. 2,500 kilometer range allows it to target anything in the region from the coast of Israel all the way to the short haul right across the strait where a lot of the Gulf bases are set up. The Imad ballistic missile there, we've seen them used basically every day. The Fatah is a hypersonic that has a maneuverable re-entry vehicle. It's a significant weapon that we have also seen nearly in every wave. The way that the IRGC has fought this battle is the field reports are done in waves. Wave 42 was today. And the Khorramshahr 4, that is their newest missile, and it has a submunitions capacity. So that warhead breaks apart and distributes smaller warheads that are harder to intercept. We will see that coming up. The IRGC has fired upwards of 3,000 drones at this point and 600 ballistic missiles, almost 600 ballistic missiles, also some cruise missiles in that 600 number. And they are saying 40% are targeting Israel and 60% versus US bases. They've targeted 17 vessels out in the sea. CENTCOM, for its part, the United States says they've carried out more than 6,000 airstrikes, and the Israelis say 7,500 bombs have been dropped. But the Iranians are continuing to fire undeterred by this. We can see on the next slide the rest of their arsenal, because interestingly, with all these think tanks getting their multi-million-dollar endowments and following Iran like this is the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and they don't have a graphic that includes all of the missiles that Iran is firing. So I had to pull together multiple graphics, which should tell you something about these organizations that have been pro-sanction, pro-war on Iran for decades, and still aren't even capable of logging correctly the number of missiles and the missile capabilities on a single slide. So I used multiple here. So again, here you're seeing the 𝐓𝐡𝐞. This is their newest one. We haven't seen that used. It's its most advanced. The 𝐓𝐡𝐞, like I said, being used all the time. The Ghadr all the time as well. And the Shahab 3 you'll see launched in upcoming slides. This is 11, so 12 has audio in it. Oh, this is 11. Okay, so this is the Khorramshahr. This is the ballistic missile that launches 80 submunitions out of the warhead, and we'll see footage of that coming up. Our next slide here has audio in it, so be prepared for that. So we're going to see all of their weapons launched in this series of launches. And just to give you a sense of how the field reports are done, for example, the 34th wave earlier this week, the IRGC said the firing of a targeted system of powerful and strategic Qadr, Imad, and Fatah missiles and the Khyber hypersonic missile in the 34th wave of Operation True Promise 4 has entered the battlefield with the American and Zionist aggressors into a new phase. The gathering place of American soldiers at 2 bases in Al-Zafra and Al-Jafar, that's in the UAE and Bahrain, were effectively targeted by the firing of the IRGC aerospace missiles and the Vanguard attack of drones. And they said where they were targeting Ramat David Air Base in northern Israel, Haifa's naval base, and installations around Tel Aviv, including the hidden missile launchers in front of Tel Aviv. And at the end, they say Iran's target bank for attacking American and Zionist regime military and infrastructure resources in the region is 10 times the targets available to the incapable enemies. Security and stability in the region is either for everyone or it's for no one. So that was their report from the 34th wave. We are now at 42nd wave today, and these attacks are coming steady. One thing that the Israelis say, and the Americans too, they're constantly saying that the rocket fire, missile fire is down X number of percentages to try to make it sound like Iran cannot fire the missiles. But what they're comparing it to is on the first day when they fired 300 missiles, And that was just the opening day salvo. This is how they've handled the war since then. Roughly 20 ballistic missiles a day, along with hundreds of drones. And that has been the way they fire. Israel has said this week that 800 missiles and drones as of Tuesday have been fired at them from Iran. They said, the IDF said, that about half of the roughly 300 ballistic missiles Iran has launched into Israel so far have been of the submunition warhead. And 2 people were killed in Israel this week. And you can see in these launches that there's some double launches. They're also using operational security that we saw all over Gaza, and Hezbollah, the way like you see here. They're blurring the mountain range that they're firing out, but you can see that they're firing from different areas because we previously hadn't seen those mountains. We hadn't seen those flat areas in the same way. So they're clearly firing from all over the country. And it's a massive country. The next slide that we will see is the arrival of one of these submunitions. Is that right?
Oh my God. Holy shit. اللهم آمين. اشتفى سنوزة.
And so you can see there the way that the submunitions come out. These are the ones from the 𝐓𝐿 that are 80, but there's also refitted warheads on the 𝐓𝐻𝐻, which is 15 to 20 of those. And the next slide as well is the arrival of a submunition of the 𝐓𝐿. And you can see by this, these are single missiles. Israel is trying to get these called cluster bombs. They want them to be associated with cluster munitions that the international community has outlawed. I'll get a bit more into that after we see this next one, because they're clearly not cluster bombs. That's a single strike of a submunition that could be shot out of the air by any of Israel's 4 air defense systems if they worked. We'll explain in a bit why they're not working as well also. So 15, yeah. You can see this is from a traffic camera landing in the middle of an open street there. Also no sirens on those last 2 ones, which I think are notable. Israelis certainly thought they were notable. And you can see in the next slide, you could see the depth of the impact, and the car flipped over there. We're looking at 2 Israeli soldiers with their faces blurred because they're criminals and they all know it, and their army knows it, and they don't put any pictures of them up. Now, usually they turn their heads, which is what they're doing here. We're looking at the side of their face and the other guy has his back turned. That's how we see even Israeli graduations these days. Because they have a feeling that justice may catch up to them for this war for them that is now 880 days into their genocidal rampage. The next slide you'll see is what the submunition looks like. That's roughly the size, several kilos of explosives in each one. And they're in the nose cone of the re-entry vehicle, and they break apart as we saw in those previous videos. But what Israel is trying to do is call them cluster bombs, which are a horrendous weapon that puts miniature bomblets. The bomb breaks open and it showers a small area with hundreds, if not thousands, of small bombs. And this is something that Israel did famously, infamously, at the end of the July 2006 war in Lebanon, when they had realized that they had lost the war. They sued for peace, and then they fired in the last days cluster bombs. Let's go to the next slide, because this is a slide from Haaretz newspaper in Israel that says, IDF commander, we fired more than 1 million cluster bombs in Lebanon. The subtitle says, phosphorus and cluster bombs heavily used, unexploded munitions litter a wide area of Lebanon. And I was in Lebanon at that time, and they were everywhere. They were hanging from trees. They were in people's houses. They were in the gardens and the shrubbery, so you couldn't see them. They're just small, and they're deadly. This is what the article said, quoting the head of the IDF rocket unit. What we did was insane and monstrous. We covered entire towns in cluster bombs. Quoting the battalion commander, the rocket unit head stated that the IDF fired 1,800 cluster bombs containing over 1.2 million cluster bomblets. In addition, soldiers in the IDF artillery units testified that their army used phosphorus shells during the war, forbidden under international law, and that the multiple launch rocket systems were highly inaccurate. So these are cluster bombs. They're all in one area. And they're intended to kill civilians. The submunitions that is coming out of a ballistic missile spreads them out over multiple kilometer range. All it is doing is making a single missile into a dozen or dozens of missiles to be intercepted. And those interceptions are supposed to happen by Israel's layered multi-billion-dollar, hundreds of billions of dollars air defense system. And it's not. And they're trying to call them cluster munitions because that's what Israel does, projects the things that they do criminally and hope that they can make it stick onto somebody else. Let's take a look at the next one. We're going to watch the launch of Shahed drones here. So this is some of the 3,000 drones that have been launched so far. They can take off from there. You can see they don't need to be truck mounted, although we have seen truck mounted with racks that can send out a dozen at a time. But you can also send these from the desert and fire them off relatively safely in comparison to other munitions. So this type of weapon is not going to run out. And it's been very, very effective. And you're looking at the Navy's drones there. So if we look at the next slide, we also have audio in this for the launch of drones and cruise missiles. This is number 18 we're at now. That's the Pava cruise missile that you can see, and we're going to see later in the show that the Iraqi resistance is using that same type of drone. We also saw the Hadid 110 for the first time. It's a small turbo engine with a 350 kilometer max that carries a 30-kilo payload, and we've seen these be used by the Iranian Navy on targets in the Gulf that are close to them. We also have audio in on this next one for launches. These are launched by the Iranian army, which is also in the battle along with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So this is number 19 with audio. So you could see those launches again. The White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said this week, she confirmed a report by Reuters that said as many as 150 troops have been injured since military operations began a week ago, saying that number of injured is in the ballpark of 150, something that had been covered up until now. Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell told the Associated Press that 8 U.S. soldiers have been severely injured, noting that the majority of the injuries have been minor, with some returning to duty. 7 U.S. service members have been acknowledged to have died so far, 6 of whom were killed in Kuwait and another in Saudi Arabia. Let's take a look at number 19B here. We're going to see the targeting of the Kuwaiti base with a drone from the Kuwaiti base.
Oh, shit.
And the American soldier there.
Oh, my God.
This is in Camp Buehring. And an interesting side note, it's named after one of the highest ranking officers that was killed in the Iraq War. And he was killed in 2003 in the Al Rashid Hotel in Baghdad. And he was killed in an assassination attempt on Paul Wolfowitz, who was the biggest pusher and architect of the Iraq War. Wolfowitz survived, but Buehring didn't. And they renamed this base after him. And the base is a miniature city. As people may know, these bases essentially become American cities. I watched a report on this particular base last night, and they were in Subway, they were in an arcade, they have basketball courts and gyms, they have full bus system, residence quarters. They're sprawling miniature sovereign U.S. territory. And so the reason why these are being targeted, they've been known in this region for a long time. And it speaks to the longevity of this war in Iraq, war in the region, global war on terror that normalized these bases that are now being destroyed to such a level that rebuilding them, I think rebuilding them could come into question. The destruction level is such. They're also largely abandoned, so their utility in this key moment is drastically reduced. Let's take a look at number 21. This is an IRGC drone versus a U.S. hotel in Bahrain. And the IRGC said on this, the flight of the cowardly American soldiers from regional bases, they're taking refuge in hotels and host countries, and their criminal U.S. Army's use of civilian facilities in the Persian Gulf countries as cover do not escape the intelligence monitoring of the IRGC. The brave soldiers of the IRGC are laying in wait to hunt the soldiers of the aggressor American army and will not let them go. And just on a side note, the number of locals killed in these operations are very low. In the UAE, in the total, in the 13 days, there's been 4 people killed. They were migrant workers who presumably didn't have the rights to leave the job sites in the way that the locals do. There's 2 in Kuwait, both migrant workers, 2 in Saudi, also migrant workers, and 1 in Bahrain. So when you're talking about the scale of destruction and death that Israel and the U.S. rains down, more than 1,000 in Iran already, 600 in Lebanon, and of course 100,000 in Gaza at least, it's just worth noting those numbers. Also, Bahrain arrested the people that took that video. They have arrested a number of people. The numbers are not entirely clear, but there was a report yesterday of 6 people being arrested, migrant workers that quote, filmed, published, and reposted videos related to the effects of Iranian aggression. And again, linking back to what Ali was saying about the Bahraini minister, this base, the U.S. Fifth Fleet base, is not so much a mountain of fire, as he called it, as it has not been able to do anything to defend Bahrain from what we are seeing. Number 21B here, we're going to see an attack on the Dubai airport. You're going to see a drone come in from the right here, and it's going to hit just outside of the terminal. And you can see it just misses a radar dome. It looks like that radar dome might have been the target. But this strike on the Dubai airport is part of the process of shutting down 14,000 flights in the region. Emirates Airline is the world's largest long-haul airline and by far the largest airline in the Middle East. And they are not flying there. You see a close-up of the Shahid strike there on the Dubai airport. Next up, we're going to see the integrated air defense system of the IRGC and the Artesh, the Iranian army. knocking these drones, U.S. and Israeli drones, out of the sky. We don't have an exact number on this, but we've seen at least dozens of these knocked out of the sky. At one point, the IRGC said that they had hit 80. It's somewhere between dozens and that, at least, because we've shown you now a dozen just on this program alone, and I don't pick all of them. Also, next one is part of our weekly coverage of local farmers with expensive American drones. There's this local farmer in Loristan driving his Hermes 900 drone around town. So that is the drone work that has been done. But this week, the targeting really came to light on what on these bases are being hit. If we take a look at number 24, we're talking about the THAAD radar, essentially eradication from the region. This is a graphic from the Financial Times that shows you, we're looking at the top radar. At the top is a $500 million radar. It's an advanced warning radar upon which all the system, not just the THAAD system, but we're talking about the THAAD system here, the US's terminal high altitude area defense system that tries to intercept before they before the missiles come back down into the atmosphere. They're exo-atmospheric, and they use the radars from the THAAD system is connected into all the air defense systems, and it's a very powerful one. And that's the efficacy of the system, is how powerful your radar is, how sharp you're able to pick up the trajectory, the launch site, and calibrate all your air defense systems on the way in. So when you knock these out, you know, some people say it's the heart or the eyes of the system, of this multi-billion-dollar system. It's a $3 billion system over the course of its lifetime. Those single radar that got knocked out is at least $500,000. And each of these systems, each of these THAAD systems is considered one THAAD system that you're looking at. And it can have 6 to 8 truck launched interceptor launchers, each one with 8. So 6 trucks by 8 is 48 launchers. That's what they have before they have to reload. And that's a $700 million outlay. And we know that last year they only made 96 total interceptors for the THAAD system. So the system itself and the interceptors is one part, but the radar itself is part of the radar for the entire system that is used by the US and Israel. We can look at the next slides. We can see the proof of that here. This is the radar. It's massive. You know, it's larger than the trailer of an 18-wheeler. It's a significant radar that has a significantly higher, like algorithmically higher capacity than the smaller radars that it passes off to. And what it does is it takes the initial reading, and then it's so large and accurate and sharp, it's able to tell the smaller radars who don't have that capability, it can tell them where it's coming, and that allows the smaller radars to then be more effective. So you take out the large radar, now your small radars are not effective. And this is a problem that for the US and Israel that will compound itself, and replacing them in battle is a long shot, although they're talking about taking the THAAD system out of South Korea. So sorry about that, South Korea, I guess, for the Americans. Promise to protect you, but actually we're just going to move your air defense system because we are getting ours all blown up. And these have been hit in concerted effort in radar communications and air defense systems in Qatar, UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. We take a look at the next slide. You can see here the damage on 𝐓𝐻𝐿 𝐓𝐡𝐿. This is the base in Jordan. You can see that's the massive radar that you can see destroyed there. We're looking at a satellite image that is boxed that shows the damaged structures. Satellite photos, according to CNN, satellite photos show a Raytheon AN/TPY-2 radar and support equipment used by the U.S. THAAD missile defense system was destroyed in 𝐓𝐻𝐿 𝐓𝐡𝐿 Air Base in Jordan in the opening days of the war. And I reported on this in the build-up to the war because 𝐓𝐻𝐿 𝐓𝐡𝐿 base was being used for more fighter jets than we had seen. There was at least 60 additional ones on top of the U.S. Expeditionary Wing. The radar system for the THAAD and the transporter radar manufactured by Raytheon, according to the 2025 Missile Defense Agency budget, costs $500 million, as I have said. We'll look at another one. Are we on 26 here? This is another one showing the base from a little further up. But you can see, again, clearly see the damage. It's out in the open in the desert, and you don't see missed strikes all around it. It looks like the precision of these weapons are not area weapons. They're not missing by missing by 20 or 30 feet. You're seeing direct on hits. This image shows a pair of 13-foot craters in the sand near the radar system, suggesting that it may have taken multiple attempts to hit the system, which is split across 5 40-foot trailers. According to the CNN report, all appeared to be destroyed or seriously damaged. So they're picking them off one by one. They can do that with their drones. The U.S. has a really difficult time finding the drones in themselves, and they're using those drones to knock out the ballistic missile defense systems in these countries. Number 27 here. Now we're going to look at the UAE. Again, you get the same site, a before and after of the system being destroyed in the UAE. At least 3 buildings at the military installation in Ruwais and 4 at an installation in Sadr. Both in the UAE were damaged between February 28th and March 1st, according to CNN. Pull-through vehicle sheds used to store radar systems and THAAD batteries at the sites were among those destroyed. And the next one you'll see again, you'll see the destruction, the before and after destruction of this second one in the UAE. And the Iranians said on day 9, the spokesperson for the IRGC said that the highly advanced radars of the THAAD system, which have an extremely long range and have been destroyed during operations to suppress the enemy's anti-missile defense in the region. 4 highly advanced U.S. THAAD system radars were targeted and destroyed. The highly advanced long-range THAAD radars located in Al Rubayah, Al Ruwais in the UAE, and Al Kharj in Saudi Arabia, and Al Azraq, that's Muwafaq Al Salti in Jordan, were targeted and destroyed in a 24-hour period of time. Let's skip to number 31 here, because this is the early warning radar in Qatar, and this is a critical piece of all of the air defense. This is the most powerful radar, and it's the radar upon which all the other radars rely. And we can see here that it has been totally destroyed as well. So very significant for a long battle of attrition that the air defense systems are already struggling to a significant degree based on precision targeting by the Iranian military. So that is the coverage of the Iran front and the Gulf front. We're going to move now to Lebanon, where there have been now 10 days of war since this new battle broke out. You can see Israeli evacuation notices, as we reported earlier, and we had an excellent interview with Roqayah Chamseddine that people should definitely check out. She was reporting on the ground on these issues. Evacuation of 760,000 Lebanese on the move with basically no warning. Only 123 of whom are in school and government shelters at this point. The Israeli military says they've dropped 1,000 bombs in 700 strikes in the first week, and they've killed 600 and wounded 1,400 others, as we know from the earlier reports on this show. So that is the map of Lebanon that you're looking at there. The next slide is Hezbollah's response. Hezbollah said, we are warning the residents of the northern settlements, essentially doing what the Israelis do. You are required to evacuate all settlements located within 5 kilometers of the borderline. The aggression of your army against the Lebanese sovereignty and civilians and the destruction of civilian infrastructure and the campaign of displacement it is carrying out will not go unanswered. Head south. And Hezbollah field reports have been ending with this line: the Islamic resistance is committed to defending its land and people, especially with the Israeli enemy exceeding boundaries with its crimes. Its response targeted military sites, the Islamic resistance. Its response targeted military sites, unlike the enemy's targeting of civilians, and this is the minimum duty to curb it and prevent it from persisting in its dangerous objectives against Lebanon, its state, its people, and its resistance. Hezbollah has fired over 1,000 rockets since they joined the war 10 days ago. Let's take a look at this first operation. This is an anti-tank guided missile strike, a long-distance strike, presumably with an Almas, which is a reverse engineered anti-tank guided missile system that Hezbollah captured during the 2006 July war. You can see that this is one of the Israeli positions. After the war, Israel set up 5 advanced positions inside Lebanese territory. And this is one of those 5 positions. And you can see no matter how much earth moving the Israelis do, the Israeli soldiers always get up on top of that earth mound that is supposed to protect them and stand around. And that is what they're doing. In this case, the IDF reported at least 5 casualties from multiple anti-tank guided missile strikes on this base in that single day. This is from 3 days ago. And like I said, it's one of 5 forward bases inside of Lebanon. And the Israeli army reported that 2 soldiers were moderately wounded in a Hezbollah missile attack on a military post in South Lebanon on Friday afternoon. Several anti-tank missiles were fired in the attack, and 3 others were wounded later in strikes. So also in a separate operation a couple of days ago at 3 a.m. near the IDF outpost in Margolit and Manara. So these are the positions set up inside Lebanon. They force the engineering vehicle, the Puma engineering vehicle of the 601st Battalion got struck. The company commander went in with a recovery bulldozer to tow the vehicle out, accompanied by 2 D9 armored bulldozers. During the towing attempt, an anti-tank or explosive projectile hit one of the D9s, and 2 soldiers were killed on the spot. Another officer was injured in that as well. Now let's take a look at the rocket attacks. We're at 35 now here. This is rocket attacks on Kiryat Shmona, which is in the top of the Galilee Panhandle. You can see the Hezbollah crest there, and the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei there beside him being saluted on the front lines in these very dangerous launches of rockets with, Israeli fighter aircraft, helicopters, and drones in the air. Didn't get the video on the show today, but there's one released by Hezbollah today where you can see them setting the rockets with that over watch by the Israelis. Let's take a look at the incoming. Oh, okay, sorry. There's a couple more. You can see the fighter in the dark there, moving away to safety after this launch. And these count as one operation too, right? So I'm going to tell you how many Hezbollah operations there has been, almost 200. But that's just number of individual operations. That doesn't tell you how many weapons were fired, because as we see here, there are multiple launches in each time. And again, with these Hezbollah videos, they give us the map of exactly what they are targeting. And you can see this is a multiple rocket launchers, at least 14 barrel rocket launcher that's going to be fired at Kiryat Shmona. Here, when the fighters get the launch coordinations typed into this launcher, they can set it for a timer, and then they can get out of the area for counterfire, which is what you're seeing the fighters do when they're setting those launch boxes. And these are significant launches. These are heavier. So far, they've been firing a lot of heavier weaponry, 302 millimeter rockets, and they have. This is the Iron Dome system that you're watching at now, coming and attempting to intercept. You saw one just there fire into the community from a misfire. Let's look at 36 because you can hear that with the sound in. you can see that's a pretty good shot of how the misfire ended up in the community. 37, we also see incoming rockets here. And you can see the aerial battle. We're watching the streaks across the sky. This is the Iron Dome versus Hezbollah rockets. And you can see the Hezbollah rockets have the high ground advantage firing down, and the missiles are attempting to intercept. And you can just watch that for yourself and see that the interception rate is low. And with these radars out, it is a strong supposition that the Iron Dome used those radars because of how powerful they were to help to assist their systems. Let's look at number 38, because we have the launch of Hezbollah drones here, which they have also been using as multi-layered attacks. The drones are composite, so they have a smaller radar cross section, and you can see the Israelis have been having a terrible time with this, as have the Americans. And the reason why the Americans made a clone of the Iranian Iranian drone, because of how effective they are. And so the Israelis have not been able to get these, to get many of these drones, despite the fact that they have helicopters constantly hunting for these across the desert in the south and also in the north. And you're going to see here, the soldiers see it coming over and they open fire on it. We can see in the next slide that I called Life After THAAD. This is them. This is the rifle air defense system. It's not going to hold up too well if that is the long-term plan. And of course, you might ask, if they're firing into their neighborhoods like that to try to shoot down the drones, is there a problem? Yes, there is. The IDF said this week several homes in northern Israel were damaged by helicopter fire during attempts to shoot down Hezbollah drones this morning. The helicopter used 30mm cannons to shoot down the drone over the Lebanon border. So those are pop bottle size rounds from the Apaches that you don't want falling in your community. And they are, because they're failing to detect these in time. Let's take a look at number 40 here. These are Fadi 6s. These are heavy extended range rockets that Hezbollah has. That carry a heavy warhead, 150 kilo warhead. And here they're aiming and showing you that they're aiming at Israel Aerospace Industries, which is the manufacturer it's the national manufacturer along with Rafael. But you can see the truck launch there, and the operational security is not even letting us see the whole truck because they don't want to show where this is being launched from. But you can see the vertical truck launch happening there. This was among at this point, as of Tuesday, Hezbollah had carried out 65 separate operations. Israel Aerospace Industries manufactures everything from unmanned D9 bulldozers that we watch destroy Gaza, along with the missile defense systems. So they're using their rocket and missile capacity to target those systems. And we'll see the next one. These are high quality operations. Hezbollah ability to pinpoint and target the Rafael military manufacturer here with a rocket barrage. Rafael is the manufacturer of the Iron Dome. So we have rockets being fired at the Iron Dome maker. So a lot of significance, but also military advantage to doing this for the same reason the Americans are doing it. You target these systems and attempt to do a blinding operation is essentially what it is. And we saw this on the first days of October 7th when the successful attack on IDF bases was made possible by blinding those bases to what they think that they can count on to protect them. Like the Gulf states believe that this missile defense system, which is not having its best showing here in one of its first, if not its first ever active combat. These missile defense systems have been sold to the American public, since Reagan, since Star Wars, to try to shoot down missiles. So you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollar program that we're seeing in its final, in its peak iteration. And one more, we can see Nasser rockets. These are 302 millimeter rockets that are have attached to them. Hezbollah has retrofitted them with a guidance system. So these become guided missiles, and they're Hezbollah built, and they are going to target here the naval air base, or the naval base in Haifa. And the naval base in Haifa has a lot of radars for maritime tracking, but also it does dual function of tracking the northern border. So they are targeting these installations, these radars, for the same purposes. And this is a significant number of operations in the early days for Hezbollah. They are carrying out average of about 25 operations a day from a group that, if you listen to Western media or Israeli military or Israeli politicians, that this group was destroyed and degraded and then couldn't fight back. And they joined this war showing the exact opposite. Of course, on this program, people who are followers of this program know that we did not do that to Hezbollah. On the war ended in Lebanon. The Lebanon front ended with Hezbollah ground forces repelling an invasion by the Israeli military that numbered in the tens of thousands of soldiers along the border, and they couldn't infiltrate into Lebanon to the areas that they wanted to because Hezbollah was a considerable fighting force that repelled them. It's not, to me, surprising that Hezbollah is able to mount this kind of resistance because you were sold a bill of goods on their status before. One more 43 here. We're going to see, again, these guided Nasser series rockets. There's two types missiles. They're missiles because they have guidance systems. And you're going to see them target here a key satellite installation in central Israel that used to be a national satellite installation, but was privatized. But it is the key download link from space of satellite communications, television communications, radio communications, and it's a satellite station and a satellite farm. So again, targeting it effectively, as we're going to see coming up in this video, because Hezbollah has attached this video of dash cam footage we're watching, and there you see the strike on the right-hand side there. So dash cam footage that was released by the Israelis immediately shows up in Hezbollah's video to prove that they hit these targets, which, by the way, Israel denied happened, which they do every time. And that is what working right now in this den of lies that we are living in is always challenging. So 44, there's just one more. Was that him walking around? Did we see him walking around? He's going to walk, Israeli soldier here walking around. You can see all of a number of the satellites destroyed. You can see the main transmitter there also destroyed at this satellite farm. So successful hits by Hezbollah. And just to give you a sense, Hezbollah in the first week carried out 153 operations. So in the first 7 days, 153 operations, 96 into Israel, 57 into Israeli positions inside Lebanon. The targeting distance was 160 kilometers. So they've already moved to the highest level of depth of targeting as they were when the war left off. They're not re-entering the escalation ladder. They've targeted 36 military bases in those 153 attacks. They've downed 3 drones, and they've used 90 missiles, 9 artillery, 90 missile ops, 99 artillery ops, 29 drones. Enemy losses, they suspect 19 military vehicles, 74 fortifications and defensive positions, which is what those berms that we saw them getting hit on are. And that is just 1 week of operations from Hezbollah. So that is the Lebanon front. And I want to show you a little bit from Iraq before we wrap up here. This is the Islamic resistance in Iraq targeting U.S. bases. This is their own compilation. They put these videos out every day, multiple times a day. But this is a compilation of their attacks. They are targeting the Operation Inherent Resolve Base Command headquarters in Erbil. They're hitting facilities all over Iraq. The Inherent Resolve Command in Erbil is hit daily, but there's of course American positions all over Iraq that are being hit. The American presence headquarters at Baghdad airport is being hit. Housing soldiers, the housing units of soldiers on the occupation base in Erbil have been hit. There you can see some of the aftermath of that. And these are with largely with drones, although we're going to see on the next slide a cruise missile launched. This is the Jamal 10. This is its debut flight. It's based on the Pava IRGC cruise missile that we saw launched earlier, and particularly the cruise missile we saw during Operation True Promise 1 and 2, when they sent the waves of drones ahead of time, and the cruise missiles. So the drones go slow, cruise missiles go faster, missiles go on an arcing ballistic trajectory. And so when you send the three of them, it sends a multi-layered attack. And for the Iraqi resistance here, I mark them down every day. They're at 291 operations. They're averaging almost 30 a day against the American positions in Iraq. And those, the Pava, the Jamal 10 that you saw, the cruise missile, that can target Israel. And they said they did target Israel with that. And with this one last slide, just want to show you how the Americans are doing here. The Pentagon has burned through $5.6 billion worth of ammunition during the first 2 days of its military assault on Iran, according to 3 U.S. officials. A figure underscores the deepening alarm among some on Capitol Hills. $5.6 billion in 2 days to basically watch their entire military architecture in the Middle East be destroyed. So that is the resistance report for day 888 of Israel's genocide.
My God. What we could do with that $5 billion in just the first 10 days of this.
$2 billion in radars. It's just
incredible.
It's
incredible.
And the money that the Gulf states have spent on all this useless weaponry that could have been spent on education, housing, development.
I mean, South Korea entered the deal, right? And bought the missiles, bought the THAAD defense missile system from the US, and now the US is taking it back. Like, just the humiliation rituals by all of these countries that have entered into these contracts with the US just to have them be completely obliterated.
I think the value, if you think about it, the value of a guarantee from the US is that it was based on the idea that the US is so powerful and strong that no one would dare attack you if you had a US base on your territory or if you had US troops on your territory. And it just seems like that is powerful as long as the US doesn't demonstrate its vulnerabilities. And it seems like that the credibility of any US guarantee has just evaporated no matter what the outcome of the war. I don't like to make predictions like Jon said, but at the same time, as Jon says, it's not going to get any easier. Interceptors don't grow on trees. Maybe
those radars don't grow on trees. Like, I mean, you have a hard time with the interceptors. Like, try replacing all of those. And when are you going to do it? You're not doing it in the war.
No.
I mean,
and that seems like the fallacy too of Trump boasting about, we destroyed their ballistic missile factories, we destroyed their drone factories. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Assuming they did, Iran is not relying on missiles or drones that are coming off the production line right now.
No. But they are, because they could be made so fast that they could have a production line of the Shaheds that still rolls. So those drones are causing an outsized amount of damage compared to what I put the audio in so that people can hear it. It's basically a lawnmower engine that you're hearing.
You can really hear them coming.
You can hear them coming, and they have a pinpoint precision strikes. And destroying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're really destroying the U.S. military architecture in the Middle East, which
Yeah,
poses this about the speech today by Khamenei, saying that the end of this will be no more U.S. bases in the region. That's what they're talking about. And the U.S. is going to be at a point at the end, by the end of this war, where their bases are in such ruins that the idea of abandoning them will be very relevant, I think.
Yeah. I mean, just that footage you were talking about, the radars, and that footage of the radar system in the occupied West Bank that Israel has put adjacent to the Bet Shemesh settlement colony, which is, between kind of eastern or western Bethlehem area and Jerusalem. I mean, I remember many times driving past it. I think you and I, John, have actually driven past it together at least once, many, many years ago. And, it's just this like enormous installation in the middle of this, meadow, sandwiched between this, one of the biggest settlement colony blocks in that part of the West Bank. And then on the other side, and I tweeted about this yesterday, on the other side, on the left, when you see that video, there's the radar installation on the right, and then there's the road. And then on the left are these hillsides covered in pine tree forests. And that is the village of Beit Natif, one of, the hundreds of Palestinian villages that was destroyed by the Zionist militias in 1948.
And planted over with
trees. All of these, Western Mediterranean, Spanish and French and Italian pine trees, to make it into this like forest area. I once took a friend from Dheisheh refugee camp whose family was expelled from Beit Natif. And I remember us going to that area. Now it's like this, picnic part of the national park system that Israel has set up in order to hide their crimes in these planted forests. But you can still see the ruins of these homes. There are apparently, I looked it up on 𝐓𝐡𝐞 yesterday, there are apparently a couple of grave sites in Beit Natif that have been opened and desecrated, and bones are sticking out because Israel, that's what Israel does as well. And then you're kind of like gazing onto this beautiful part of Palestine, and all of a sudden there's this enormous, alien radar system. And I don't know when it was built.
It was built in the 70s. It was a national project, but of course, like everything neoliberal, it got sold to a private company.
Yeah.
But it's their national, like it's the backbone of their national, like television and radio signal.
It's just
and they said it didn't get hit. I mean, that's the thing, right? They said it didn't get hit.
They keep saying that, the missiles are landing in open areas, but you have people in Israel on Twitter, on social media saying, we don't know where the missiles are landing.
Right.
I mean, it's very clear that Iran has not been targeting major population centers in Israel with the purpose of causing, widespread casualties or destruction. They have not been doing that. I see that myself because I can... From here in Amman, I can see the missiles. We get the sirens 5 or 6 times a day. And I go out and look, and they will send one missile at a time towards the Tel Aviv area or the Jerusalem area. But you're hearing multiple. They're definitely sending missiles into military bases. They're saying so themselves. The Iranians, I mean, they're saying we're targeting this base, that base. But the Israeli government and military is not giving any information about that to the public or to the media. And so we're reliant only on these very few fragments that come out.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to say, it's hard to say how badly damaged they are without the kind of, John, what you're giving us is kind of a whole context in which to understand it with the damage to the radars and so on. I mean, I noticed when they first hit the THAAD radars, suddenly the warning times became very short.
Yeah.
They've gone back up again a little bit, but they used to be 10, 12 minutes. Now you might get 3 or 4. So they seem to have improved it slightly, but it's not back up to where it was.
I think they've switched to their satellite-based systems more to try to compensate for it. But the systems are so intertwined that when you take down the major radars, those are the advanced radars, give all the other radars their ability to be effective. So yeah,
Wow.
we'll see. We'll see.
I was really struck, John, by what you said about the US military bases in the Gulf and how they're little sort of miniature American cities. And I want to tell a brief little anecdote, if I can, about these military bases. When I was 19, I went to see the film Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, and I promise this story is relevant. It's not just an excuse to talk about nerd things. But I went in those days, right? Films came out earlier in the US than they did in this country. And being a massive Star Wars fan, I wanted to see it early. And for various reasons that I won't go into now, I happened to know a friend of a friend who was an American soldier and lived on one of these military bases. Now, the US, I don't know how many it was then, but the US has hundreds of as we all know, is often said 800 military bases around the world. I was told recently the total now is closer to 900, but be that as it may, it's clearly hundreds and hundreds of this is the world's largest global empire that's ever been seen. And I went to one of these bases, RAF Fairfoot, where the B-52s are taking off now, still to aid the criminal aggression against Iran at the moment by the US, aided by the UK. And yeah, it was quite an eye-opening experience because it was, it's called RAF Fairfoot, right? Royal Air Force. But it's fully an American military base, and it is like a little American town. And they had fast food chains there that we don't have in the UK. And when the film started, it was the Pledge of Allegiance, or like the I can't remember. It was bizarre. It was very, very strange. Like you had to stand up to salute the flag. We didn't do that because we were like, "What the hell is this? This is weird." We sort of stood up though, so we didn't stand out too much. But
wow.
Yeah, it was a strange experience, but we did see Star Wars early.
Well, we hope to see Britain freed from US occupation.
Yeah, it's literally a military occupation, and people don't even talk about it really in this country, whereas they do in other countries. Like, there's a long struggle in Okinawa in Japan against the US military bases there.
Yeah.
There's no such, there is some protests. I did go to one. I tried to go to one in 2003 against the Fairford military base when they were beginning to bomb Iraq, but we were kidnapped by police. A story for another time, maybe. We did eventually get compensation for denial of our human rights, but yeah.
Well, next week we'll be continuing to report on whatever happens. It's a very fast changing scenario for people all over the region and all over the world, and we will be here, of course. Let's quickly take a look at the website. We have a bunch of really fantastic and important analyses and features. Ali, you just published something this morning about a new report on a massacre in Gaza, researched by Euromed. Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, this piece, Gaza Mom watched the bodies of her sons for 4 days. It's a really heartbreaking case. And this is a sort of an in-depth study of the horrific crimes against one family, the Al-Awani family in Khan Yunis, beginning in February 2024, with a drone attack on their house, injuring two brothers, injuring a brother and the father. And then when they tried to take them to the hospital, snipers shot the other sons in the street. Their mother, Tahani, managed to get to the hospital. She was shot on the way, but then she couldn't leave because this is the Nasser medical complex. The Israeli army put it under siege. So she remained in the hospital. No one was able to help her sons. Three sons, Hussam, Abdullah, and Saad, they bled to death in the street as she watched, and then she had to watch their bodies for 4 days from the hospital. No one could recover them or bury them. And meanwhile, the Israeli army kidnapped the father, who had been injured, and two surviving brothers from the house and took them to detention camps where they were horrifically tortured. And Euromed for Human Rights documented and took the testimonies of the surviving family members in this really harrowing report, which I read and wrote about. And they're hoping that this will be used as what they call an exemplar case by the International Criminal Court. When you read it, you realize how horrific this was for this one family. But what makes it even more unbearable is knowing this is just one of countless stories like this that just cannot be brushed under the carpet and forgotten. And so it's incredible that Euromed and groups like Euromed are documenting these stories to make sure there is accountability, and we can't let that accountability go. So that's what this story is about. I hope people will take a look at it. And then other stories that I just think are so important. One piece that really I found very heartbreaking to read is the one by Yusuf El-Mbayad, Married to Burden, Divorced from My Dreams. And if you want to understand, I mean, last week we talked with Dunya Abu Sittah about life in Gaza right now during the so-called ceasefire. But if you really want a perspective of what it's like trying to survive in Gaza right now, a day in the life of someone like Yusuf, who is an English teacher, who has dreams of his own, who wants to start a life. He has 24 family members who depend on him. And he describes in this piece a day in his life trying to survive and trying to find the means for his family to survive. And I just think it's so important to keep a focus on that and to make sure we're doing all we can to talk about what's happening in Gaza and to do whatever we can to keep supporting people in Gaza so that they can stay there and live the life that they deserve. So that's just a couple of really powerful pieces we have.
Thank you for that. And of course, to keep this platform, this publication going, and to keep helping us support our contributors in Gaza, click that Donate Now link up at the upper right-hand corner of the page. There we are. You can be a monthly donor. That is one of the most wonderful ways that you can support this publication. And Ali, we always have people to thank, but
we do. But before I do that, am I allowed to give a bit of good news? Because I think people like good news, don't they? So,
please.
You know, so much is happening that this is sort of just barely a footnote in my week, but in other circumstances, it would be a big deal, at least for me, which is that the Swiss federal court ruled in my favor and ruled that the entry ban and expulsion order that was served on me last year when I was illegally arrested, that they were unlawful and threw them out. And so we won that case. Now we've won 3 court cases, because this was actually 2 cases in federal court. So we won the first case back in December where they ruled that my arrest and detention were unlawful. Now they've ruled in these separate cases that the entry ban and expulsion order were unlawful. And we still have some criminal cases against individuals, including Nicoletta Della Valle, the former police chief we talked about with those ties with Israel. So Are you guys tired of winning yet? So,
No.
you know, it's tough. I'm very grateful because we did all this with crowdfunding. I mean, really, all these legal cases, we did it with crowdfunding with really dedicated lawyers to bring accountability and transparency. The remaining cases, you know, it's still hard. Nothing is guaranteed, but we got this far thanks to the support of so many people. So we'll keep winning if we can. Winning is way better than losing.
That's very true. Mabruk, Ali. That's great.
And so let's do some more thanks now, right?
Yeah, let's do more thanks.
Let's do the more thanks. So, as you said, Nora, all the work we do, that fantastic report that Jon just gave us, what was that, like 47 videos, Jon?
It was more. It was more.
It was more, but all right. So it was dozens, and you spent the whole week going through those so that we can know what's real and what's fake. Because if you go on social media now, there is so much fakery. So you bring that expertise to you know, so that people can really understand what's going on. That takes time. It takes effort, and we can only do it because so many people support our work and support all the work you see, everything on this live stream, everything on the website, and we're so grateful for it. That's what makes us independent. That's what allows me to say things without worrying about, you know, I could say what I want about Russia, China, the United States, Israel, the Arab states. I'm going to say it all because we're independent. And so thank you to Nazmul, Sabrina, Mariana, Sui, Martin, Mehmet, Sylvia, Timothy, Graham, Michael, Leonora, Tracy, many thanks to Tracy, by the way, Joy, Saer, and Susan. And if you want to be among these many fantastic people support our work, as Nora said, you can go to electronicintifada.net, click donate now from anywhere in the world, or if you're watching on YouTube, there are links in the description below. Only give if you can afford it. The model here is that those who have the means make this work possible so that everyone in the world has access to it free forever. We'll never put up a paywall. We'll never charge you to watch, listen, or read the work we do. It's for everyone, and it's thanks to you.
That's right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to everyone at the Electronic Intifada, of course, all of our dear co-workers, colleagues, friends who put this, not just this live stream together, but are behind the scenes in all of the editing and production that goes into the website, of course. I especially want to thank Tamara Nassar, our tireless and fearless producer and director. Thank you, Tamara.
None of this would work without Tamara. I think you guys know that already, but we might as well admit it. She's the pillar holding us all up here.
That's right. So we're nothing without you.
Thank you,
Tamara. Thank you to Ali Gerzon for social media production. Thanks to Pierre Loisel for radio show production. Thank you to Maureen Claire Murphy, our senior editor, Michael F. Brown for doing fact-checking, everyone else at the Electronic Intifada, of course. And on behalf of myself, Jon, Ali, Asa, and Tamara, thank you all, and we will see you next week.